A deadly game of cat and mouse is about to start in Montana's isolated highlands. The most vicious Mexican cartel thinks they are dealing with another elderly rancher and they target a peaceful farm in Duskwood Valley. They are completely mistaken. Logan Hunter is not like other farmers. He led top-secret missions that would never be seen by the public for 30 years, making him the most deadly Delta Force commander in U.S. military history. Phantom, a ghost that appeared out of nowhere and disappeared without a trace, was his call sign. This isn't your typical war tale. This is the story of how the most deadly cartel in the Western Hemisphere discovered the hard way that some veterans never lose their fighting spirit. They were unaware that they were entering a trap created by an expert in asymmetric warfare when they arrived for his land. This is the story of how a man and his elite team, armed only with a remote farm, decades of fighting experience, and the tactical genius that made him a legend, were able to destroy an entire cartel operation in just 5 days. Tell us where you're tuning in from before we resume. Make sure to subscribe if this tale resonates with you, as I have something really special in store for you tomorrow. Logan Hunter was walking his property line when the early frost crackled beneath his boots. The sky was painted in amber and gold hues as dawn broke over the Montana Rockies. As usual, Ranger, his German shepherd, trotted next to him, alert and vigilant. Even at 65, Logan maintained the fluid grace of a much younger man, his eyes always searching his surroundings, old habits that had sustained him during 30 years of fighting. "Something's not right, boy," Logan muttered, kneeling to examine fresh tire tracks in the mud. Ranger growled softly in agreement. The tracks were deep, made by heavy vehicles, and they weren't from any local trucks he recognized. Sarah Bennett, his closest neighbor, pulled up in her weathered pickup. "Logan, thank God you're out here. Did you hear about the Hendersons?" Logan stood up and removed the dirt from his jeans. "How about them? They have vanished. Last night, I simply packed up and departed. Nothing, no warning. However, I noticed men there this morning. Large SUVs that are black. There are guys who don't appear to be local. A cartel?" Logan spoke calmly, but his thoughts were already rushing over possibilities, assessing dangers, and making preparations. Sarah's palms tightened around the steering wheel as she nodded. "In town, people are saying that. They have been coming up from the south and purchasing properties that aren't selling. Well, they try to convince them in different ways." Logan's mouth clenched. "Have they come over to you yet?" "No, but the same thing happened at Miller's apartment last week. Too much money to turn down, mysterious purchasers. Those who remain claim to be using the farms as avenues for distribution." "That makes sense," Logan remarked, already planning it out in his tactical mind. Separate properties, valid cover for traffic, and pre-existing storage facilities. Sarah lowered her voice and leaned out her window. "These aren't your typical criminals, Logan. They are well-funded and well-organized. No one else will confront them, and the sheriff is out of his depth." Logan gave her truck's side a pat. "Sarah, don't worry about me. I've had worse experiences. Just exercise caution. This alley is their methodical goal. They're going to knock on your door shortly." Logan whistled for Ranger and made his way to his barn as Sarah drove off. There was a secret cellar that he had put in when he originally purchased the land, concealed beneath the common tools and farm equipment. His buddies had referred to it as old paranoia. Logan referred to it as preparation. He removed the fake floorboard to find a stash of tools he had intended to never need again. Armaments, tactical equipment, and communications equipment of military caliber. Everything he would require in the event of a crisis. All his professional life, he had been preparing for the worst. It would be the same here. Logan's phone buzzed. It was a text from a former law enforcement acquaintance. "Cartel is advancing quickly and forcefully. In the past month, 7 properties have been taken. Be mindful of your back." After putting the phone in his pocket, he went to his office and took out the valley's intricate maps. Controlling the major road and commanding 3 distinct approach roads, his property was situated at a pivotal intersection. It makes sense why they desired it. His attention was drawn to the sound of traffic on the main road. He saw 3 black SUVs roll gently past his fence via his window. Too slowly. Reconnaissance. Scratching his dog's ears, Logan murmured, marking the next target, Ranger. However, they have no idea who they are interacting with. He called former teammates for the remainder of the morning. Men who had battled beside him in unofficial locations, completing tasks that would never be completed. It's Phantom, Knox. Do you recall the favor you owe me? It's time to make the payment. Logan? It has been a while. How awful is it? Cartels are establishing distribution networks and occupying farms as they move into the valley. They will arrive shortly. From the other end came a low whistle. Do you require a backup? Reuniting the old team might not be detrimental. One final task. We're older than we once were, you know. Logan grinned glumly. They aren't either. Give the others a call. We need to get to work. His plans were underway by the afternoon. 4 of his former teammates were on their way. Their sharpshooter was Knox Raven Winters. Demo expert Cyrus Blast Alvarez. Communications expert Zane Ghost Voss. Kestrel, their medic, Nash. They would defeat armies, terrorists, and warlords together. It would be unknown to a cartel. As the sun started to drop, Logan took another stroll around his property, but this time he saw everything differently. As a commander on the battlefield, not as a farmer. You could employ every approach, every tree line, every slope. The cartel believed they were going after the farm of an elderly guy. Rather, they were entering a kill zone that had been planned by one of the world's most seasoned special operations commanders. With a quick bark, Ranger warned Logan that more cars were coming. The SUVs from earlier stopped at his gate this time. After adjusting his faded baseball cap and straightening his back, Logan got ready to pretend to be a plain farmer. Let them believe he was not dangerous. Allow them to undervalue him. They would only make that error once. 5 men, whose pricey outfits contrasted with the untamed Montana scenery, stepped out of the SUVs. Logan noted that 2 more were remaining in the cars, their hands hidden under their jackets. Ranger snarled next to him, but Logan's delicate touch silenced him. The gang was led by Felix El Espectro Reyes, who came up with his polished boots crunching on gravel. His eyes were as icy as winter steel, yet his smile was professional and well-practiced. You have a lovely property here, Mr. Hunter. Felix held out his hand. Observing the man's hold, Logan accepted it. Too aggressive, attempting to assert control. The strategy of an amateur. Gentlemen, what can I do for you? As his thoughts listed every detail, Logan's voice was calm and kind, sounding like that of a plain farmer. 2 men are making their way subtly toward his barn. One with a radio by the gate. Sloppy military training. They had become too accustomed. Felix pointed to the valley and remarked, "We are an investment group. We have been purchasing real estate in the region. You could say that operations are expanding. Your territory. We are interested in some of its qualities." Logan was the epitome of tranquility as he reclined on his fence post. He was cataloging weapons, noting their positions, and designating fields of fire inside. At least 3 of them were former military. The others were strong and accustomed to frightening bystanders. "I don't want to sell," Logan stated plainly. "My family has had land for too long." Felix gritted his teeth. "Maybe I didn't make myself clear. We are willing to make a bid that is much higher than the going rate. $3 million in cash. Quite ample for a ranch this size." In order to gain time to watch the 2 men by Ranger's barn, Logan scratched Ranger behind the ears. They were examining defensive positions and sightlines. Not investors in real estate. Map the property for an attack as part of the advance team. Logan retorted that money isn't everything. Not everything is for sale. The amiable exterior crumbled a little. Felix lowered his voice and took a step closer. Let me be blunt, Mr. Hunter. This valley is evolving. You may say progress. You may either profit from that shift or be a part of it. Or. Even as he observed the slight change in the men's positions, Logan's tone stayed composed. Standard intimidation formation surrounded him. Or you may discover that this valley is becoming increasingly inhospitable. Particularly for obstinate elderly men who are unsure of when to take a good offer. Accidents do happen. Logan slowly straightened, letting his voice take on a faint steel undertone. Mr. Reyes, that sounds like a threat. The mention of his name caused Felix's eyes to widen a little. Logan shouldn't have known that name. A deliberate blunder to show them he wasn't as stupid as he seemed. Just stating the facts, Felix bounced back fast. The valley is evolving. It would be a fight. Foolish. Something regarding security cameras was called out in Spanish by one of the men by the barn. Logan had concealed his actual monitoring system much more cleverly, allowing them to identify the apparent ones. Felix produced a business card and added, "Consider it. You have a full day." The deal becomes much less generous after that. Taking note of the phony firm name, Logan accepted the card. Typical cartel front. I'll take a nap. Make sure you do. Felix started to walk away then stopped. Lovely canine. Yes, a German shepherd. If something were to happen to him, it would be unfortunate. Sensing Logan's anxiety, Ranger snarled. Despite his soft touch on the dog's head, Logan's voice was heavy with 30 years of battle experience. That would be an extremely grave error. Felix hesitated at something in his tone, a glimmer of doubt showing on his face. The mask briefly came off, and Logan noticed a sincere astonishment. They had anticipated an easy target, a straightforward farmer they could intimidate or purchase. Rather, they had seen a glimpse of something else that raised suspicions. It took us a long time to prepare and tell this story, so please subscribe to our channel if you find it entertaining, it means a lot to us. Let's return to the narrative. In an attempt to keep their self-assured swagger, the cartel men withdrew to their cars. Logan was already preparing his next move as he watched them drive off. Knox had texted him, and his phone buzzed. After 4 hours, teams came together. Make it 3, Logan replied back, and the firm was already knocking. Logan turned on his actual security system inside his home. Every approach was recorded by cameras concealed in trees. The perimeter was monitored by motion sensors. Everything was connected to a command center he had constructed in his basement as a backup plan after years of preparing for the worst. He displayed satellite photos of the valley with known cartel properties highlighted. In the past month, 7 strategic farms have been taken. Controlling the primary valley entry point and offering unobstructed views for miles, his acreage was the missing component. Once more, his phone rang. Sarah's voice was tight with concern. Logan, didn't they come to your house? I noticed the SUVs. Just a friendly business proposal, Logan said, looking through his caches of weapons. There is nothing to be concerned about. Don't tell me lies. Miller made an effort to resist them. His barn burned down the following day. His wife's automobile crashed on a straight road the next day. Not a witness. Sarah, pay close attention. Spend the next few days in Missoula with your sister. Tell no one you're leaving. What are you going to do, Logan? You'd better not know. Have faith in me. Logan hung up and went down into his cellar. The weapons and equipment were kept up to date and ready, and the secret compartment was just as he had left it. As he field stripped and reassembled weapons, he started painstakingly inspecting each component, relying on muscle memory. Ranger gave a low whimper from above. Logan stopped and listened. There's a strange engine sound coming from another car. He looked at the local sheriff's office's cameras. Young and inexperienced, but honest, is Deputy Mike Hayes. At the gate, Logan greeted him. Hayes shuffled his feet nervously. Mr. Hunter was informed that you had guests today. Word gets around quickly. Miller, pay attention to the Hendersons and the others. We can't prove anything, but we know what happened. These individuals are linked. Witnesses alter their accounts, and evidence vanishes. Logan gave a nod. And you're here to suggest that I accept the offer. Hayes appeared embarrassed. Half the valley is already theirs. Trying to fight them is suicide. Thank you for the caution, Deputy, but I'm capable of taking care of myself. Logan's phone rang once more as Hayes drove off. Zane sent a message. Intercepted the communications. A full-scale attack is planned. They don't wait all day. Logan grinned glumly. Excellent. Allow them to arrive in force. Give them the impression that they were ahead. He knew from 30 years of fighting that overconfident adversaries make blunders. He had long since mastered the art of transforming those errors into possibilities. His squad would come in 3 hours. It took 3 hours to transform his property into a stronghold. The cartel believed they were up against an obstinate elderly man. They had recognized their error before daybreak. However, it would be much too late by then. Logan heard the sound of engines reverberating over the valley. He saw 4 cars coming from various directions on his surveillance feeds, and his team was employing time-tested strategies to evade detection. First came Knox in his black pickup, then Cyrus in a beat-up Jeep. After a few minutes, Zane and Nash showed up with dust-caked cars from backroading. Logan greeted them in the barn, out of sight. As his former team came together, 20 years slipped away, their movement still in rhythm after all this time. His sniper, Knox, carried his personalized weapon case as if it were a natural extension of his body. Cyrus packed enough explosives, all neatly hidden in containers of construction equipment, to demolish a small town. Logan was aware that Zane's communication equipment could decipher military-grade encryption, despite its civilian appearance. Although Nash's medical kit was updated, it was nevertheless familiar because he had repaired them in more dire circumstances. Knox responded in a rough yet kind voice, just like old times. But typically, the government supported us. Already studying the barn structure, Cyrus retorted, government would just slow us down. Well done, Logan. Multiple escape routes and good sight lines. You were serious when you said you were prepared. Logan laid out a thorough map on his desk. The cartel has been methodical, seizing important properties and setting up avenues for distribution. They are establishing a long-term operation, not merely a narcotics operation. Zane opened intercepted communications on his laptop. They are professional, primarily Mexican special forces with ex-military members, yet they are cocky and careless with their protection. Nash, arranging his medical supplies, noted their error. How many do we have to deal with? 30 men make up the main force, Logan said, pointing to designated spots. 2 distinct groups. The first team has the muscle, they deal with accidents, arson, and intimidation. Professionals with real-world fighting experience and appropriate tactical training make up the second team. Through the barn door, Knox surveyed the landscape. The kill zone is ideal. Here is a natural bottleneck, giving you a high ground advantage. We are able to direct them precisely where we desire. Logan said, they'll come in force. No more feigning to be entrepreneurs. They are equipped with armor, powerful weapons, and most likely air support. Good, Cyrus said with a smile as he produced his plans for demolition. We haven't had a real quarrel in a long time. Logan became serious, this isn't just about holding them off. This is over. Indefinitely. We shut down their entire operation throughout the valley, not just here. The group realized the tone and became sober. When the odds were against them, it was the voice that had guided them through impossible missions and returned them all home alive. Really, why did you come? You could have remained secure and retired, Logan said, glancing at each man. Nash opened his medicine bag next to him and spoke first. Do you recall Kosovo? After the militia passed through, we discovered that village. There are some things you can't ignore. Some battles must be fought. My cousin's farm in Texas was taken by cartels, Cyrus continued, inspecting the detonator wires. It was too late by the time anyone could take action. Never again. Not in this place. Knox's eyes were harsh, but he simply shrugged. You made a call. That's sufficient. Zane raised his eyes from his screen. They're traveling more quickly than we anticipated. Orders were intercepted, and the main force is getting ready for tonight. No bargaining, no warning. They are come to deliver a message by taking the farm. Perfect, said Logan with a gloomy grimace. Let's send them their own message. For the next hour, they strengthened strategic locations. Cyrus planted explosives on the main route that may topple an armored car. Knox positioned 3 distinct sniper nests, one for each approach. Zane connected their surveillance and communications by setting up a command center in Logan's basement. Do you recall Kandahar? As they worked, Knox inquired. That sidetracked night raid? Cyrus laughed as the entire city sprang to life. I have never in my life seen so much firepower. Nash said, until Logan called an audible against them by turning their own defenses. How you knew that would work is still a mystery. Easy, Logan said, looking through ammunition stocks. When people believe they have the upper hand, they become predictable. Cartels in the same manner. They are accustomed to easy wins and civilians. They won't be prepared for the future. Over their earpieces, Zane's voice crackled. Activity at the Henderson location. They're putting their power together. At least 20 trucks are seen with thermal imaging. As he completed his final explosive trap, Cyrus saw that they were no longer inconspicuous. Arriving in force. Good, Logan said. Indicates that they're afraid. Men who are afraid make blunders. The valley was now covered in lengthy shadows as the sun began to set. Logan watched the day disappear as he and his squad stood on the porch. Age had given something new, yet they were no longer youthful men. Experience. Patience. The insight that only comes from fighting for decades. Knox, please go to the North Tower with me. They won't expect anyone up there, and the sightlines are the best. Set up the barn for remote detonation, Cyrus. Make it appear like a desirable target. Keep an eye on their communications, Zane. We exploit them as soon as they divide their forces. Nash, be prepared to move, but the medical station is in the basement. We'll need your cell phone when this heats up. With no need for any explanation, each man nodded, understanding their positions. This could have been their final impossible mission, but it wasn't their first. With a voice full of authority, Logan added, one more thing. We are not merely protecting a farm. Every family in this valley is being protected by us. All the people these jerks would harm. We do this correctly, hygienically, and permanently. Logan made one last check of his weaponry as his men took their places. Ranger sat next to him, ready and attentive. He could see clouds of dust rising in the distance. The forces of the cartels are gathering. They believed they were getting ready to raid the farm of an elderly guy. Rather, they were entering a trap set by some of the most seasoned war veterans on the planet. Zane spoke in a strained voice as the radio crackled. With an ETA of 20 minutes, the first wave is leaving. Cop that, Logan said, gesturing to his group. Remind them to settle down and believe they are in a better position. We then demonstrate to them the capabilities of actual soldiers. The valley was plunged into darkness as the Montana sun vanished behind the mountains. But their ally had always been darkness. Logan Hunter was no longer a farmer in the shadows. Once more, he was Phantom. Ghost that pursued ghosts. And he was going to remind the cartel why individuals far more dangerous than themselves had once been terrified of that name. Through his night vision scope, Logan observed the approaching cartel caravan as the Montana landscape was silvered by the moonlight. 20 cars, driving in a line. They had been well trained by someone. Unfortunately, they had overlooked the fundamental rule of fighting. Never engage in combat on terrain your adversary has prepared. Through the calm, Zane's voice crackled, "They're splitting up. 3 groups, 2 flanking troops attempting to circle wide, and the main force approaching up the central route." From his sniper's perch, Knox spoke in a cool, businesslike tone. Their eyes on the front car. In the back seat, the officer types. "Do you want me to shoot?" "No," Logan said. "Allow them to settle in. Set my mark up for failure." The road to Logan's property was illuminated by the headlights of the convoy, which pierced the night. They made confident movements. No attempt at stealth. Why even bother? They believed they were pursuing an elderly man. Cyrus reported contact in 2 minutes. Charges are predetermined. A surprise awaits these youngsters. As the first vehicles arrived at his outside perimeter, Logan observed through his scope. The cartel soldiers moved in rehearsed formations and emerged with military accuracy, their rifles at the ready. Felix El Espectro Reyes exited an armored SUV and used hand signals to guide his soldiers. Felix spread out and gave a Spanish order. "I wish to encircle this location. Nobody survives." Zane cautioned that they were using powerful weapons. "On the trucks are 50 calories. The second wave of RPGs, Logan's tone didn't change. "Follow the plan. Allow them to make a commitment." Without seeing Logan's first line of resistance, the cartel men moved past them in a steady advance. 50 meters. 40. 30. They were nearly in place. "Sir," cried one of Felix's guys. The home was still. Thermals are not displaying anything. Felix reached for his radio. "He must be here somewhere, so check the barn." Armed with their firearms, 3 cartel soldiers advanced toward the barn. Logan counted down in his mind as he observed them through his scope. The tone would be set at this point. Logan ordered now. Cyrus set off his initial set of charges. The lead cars flew into the air in a shower of metal and mud as the ground exploded underneath them. Knox fired from his concealed position before the dust settled. Before they knew they were being attacked, 2 cartel soldiers fell. Felix yelled, "What the hell?" and raced for shelter. "What is the source of the fire?" Chaos broke out in the night. Logan's group now used the death zones they had set up all over the property. The cartel forces were ensnared in interlocking fields of fire each time they attempted to regroup. With his weapon cracking in the dark, Knox calmly reported that 3 were attempting to flank east. "I got them," Cyrus said. The flanking unit was forced directly into Nash's line of fire by a string of explosions. Logan's years of fighting experience guided every step as he walked through the darkness like a phantom. He disarmed one of the cartel soldiers and used him as a shield from the others' fire after taking them by surprise. They both went silently down. "Who are these men?" Over their radio, a cartel soldier let out a scream. "This is incorrect. They are overly well organized." Felix's voice broke the commotion. "They are experts. Drop back to the cars. Reorganize defensive stances." Logan muttered, "Too late," setting off a series of charges. The cartel forces were trapped in the kill zone as the explosions prevented them from retreating. Once more, Knox's rifle spoke. "Logan, It's technical at your 3 o'clock. The driver is still up, but the gunner is down. Logan was standing where .50 caliber shots were flying through the air when he rolled behind a tractor. The technical's driver was competent, avoiding return fire by keeping the vehicle moving, but he had neglected to keep an eye on his flanks. Logan called Cyrus. "Now let's play with that toy you brought." A rocket hit the technical's engine block as it sped through the night. The car overturned and flew off the road in a flaming ball. Cyrus chuckled, "Damn, I missed that." Similar to Damascus. "Remain focused," Logan said. "They're getting back together." Felix had rallied the rest of his men behind the ruins of their cars. Logan provided them with training. They were fast adapting, even if caught off guard. "What's their strength, Zane?" Logan moved to a new spot and inquired. 18 is still effective in fighting. They're requesting more help. 30 minutes have passed since the second wave. Knox bluntly declared, "They won't last that long," putting an end to another cartel soldier's effort to flank their position with his weapon. Logan observed Felix leading his guys and took note of their actions. Their goal was to construct a base of fire so that their reinforcements could get there. Common military concept. It's time to demonstrate to them why conventional answers result in your death. Their rallying point was hit by Cyrus. "Knox, keep an eye out for runners. Prepare yourself, Nash. A few of them may soon require medical care." The cartel's position was torn apart by several blasts. With his silenced rifle, Logan swept through the confusion like a phantom, eliminating dangers before they could come to pass. He had learned the importance of economy of motion from 20 years of combat. No hesitancy, no wasted motions. A cartel soldier cried, "Contact front. He is within our boundaries." Logan's response was brief and quiet. Before they could turn to him, 3 more fell. In an attempt to coordinate a defense against an adversary who appeared to be everywhere at once, Felix was yelling commands. "Who are you?" Felix let out a cry into the night. "Who fights like this, a farmer?" Logan answered in a voice that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere, the kind you shouldn't have threatened. The first attack by the cartel was failing. What had begun as an assured assault had devolved into a life-or-death battle. 8 of the initial 20 cars were on fire. Felix had brought 40 soldiers, but fewer than half were still engaged in combat. Felix said, "Pull back, complete retreat. Return to the rallying spot." "I doubt it," Logan remarked coolly. "Knox." 3 cracks appeared in the sniper's gun. The tires on the other car exploded, leaving them stranded in the kill zone. Felix realized they were in a trap and said, "El Fantasma is going to kill us all." Logan said, emerging from the shadows behind Felix, "El Fantasma should have done his homework. I should have inquired as to why this farm had never been successfully assaulted." Felix was too slow and whirled, brandishing his weapon. Logan's blow was accurate and effective. As his remaining soldiers turned themselves in, the cartel leader fell asleep. Knox said the area was secure. "Don't run." Logan said, "Nash, we have wounded. Keep them steady." "How are things going with their reinforcements, Zane?" "Still coming in. Out for 20 minutes. This time, the power was greater. They appear to be bringing everything they own." As he zip-tied Felix's comatose body, Logan nodded. "All right, let them arrive. The first wave served just as a reminder of our capabilities. We reveal our true selves to them in the next wave." For a little moment, the crew reloaded and checked weapons. This was only the beginning, and the night was still young. They were now prepared, synced, and warmed up for the impending actual combat. As he attended to an injured cartel soldier, Nash remarked, "Just like old times." Logan checked his ammo and said, "Better. We're fighting on our terms and on our territory this time. And we're putting an end to it permanently this time." Logan's property seemed unusually silent after the first battle. While zip-tied cartel men waited beneath Nash's watchful gaze, burning cars bathed the Montana night in orange lights. Felix was beginning to awaken, the dawning knowledge of how terribly they had miscalculated shone on his features. Nash reported that 16 inmates had completed another field dressing. 3 stable but crucial. The others are walking with injuries. Felix, looking up at Logan with a look of both defiance and dread, knelt next to him. "Let's talk about El Fantasma now," Logan replied softly. Felix spit out, "Go to hell," and then began to swear in Spanish. Logan spoke in flawless Spanish, "Your choice," startling Felix into quiet. "But in less than 15 minutes, your reinforcements will enter my death zone. It would be unfortunate if others committed the same errors that you did." With his laptop in hand, Zane walked over. Intercepted the messages they sent. El Fantasma will arrive in person. He is furious and is bringing in expert contractors and heavy weapons. The initial wave won't be like this one. Felix gave a hard laugh. "All of you are dead. There are no witnesses to El Fantasma. To reach you, he will burn this entire valley." "How many?" Calmly, Logan asked. Felix hissed, "Enough to kill you 10 times over. Colombian mercenaries, former Mexican special forces, and the top assassins for cartels." Logan interrupted him. "How many families have you traumatized, I meant? You've taken how many farms? How many mishaps did you plan?" Felix was taken by surprise by the question. His haughtiness briefly broke, revealing uncertainty underneath. Logan called Knox. "Observe what?" Over their communications, the sniper's voice cracked. "Many vehicles, various vectors of approach. This time, they're being clever. At least 40 troops, if not more, are visible in thermal. Several teams of heavy weaponry. They're dispersing," Cyrus continued. "We'll avoid falling into the same trap twice." Logan faced Felix once more. "Final opportunity. Watch more of your guys die needlessly, or help us finish this with as little slaughter as possible." Felix continued, his voice trailing off, "You don't understand what you're dealing with. El Fantasma. He is unique. He takes pleasure in the brutality. The murder. While you can, you should run." Logan stood up and said, "I've already met men like him. In locations far worse than this, they all wind up being the same." Zane's voice pierced the darkness. "First components to arrive at the outer edge. They're going more slowly, looking for obstacles." With their faces lit by the flaming wreckage, Logan approached his crew. "This time, they'll approach us from several angles in an attempt to overwhelm us with firepower and numbers. I want you mobile, Knox. After a few shots, switch places. Time for the secondary charges, Cyrus. Keep their communications jumbled, Zane." "I understand, Nash." The medic gave the inmates a nod. "Keep them safe. Don't let them die. Keep in mind," Logan continued, "that they anticipate us to be worn out and possibly injured. They believe we lost the first battle. Let them believe that. Allow them to overestimate themselves." Their radio frequencies were interrupted by a fresh voice. Powerful, deep, and with a Sinaloa accent when speaking Spanish. The real El Fanta, leading his army. Zane reported finding their command channel. "Do you want me to jam it?" "No," said Logan with a gloomy smile. "Let them speak. When people can communicate their fear, it works better." The group dispersed, taking up their assigned positions. They hardly needed words because they had been working together for years. Every man was aware of his role and trusted the others to fulfill it. Logan saw the second wave of the cartel move forward through his night vision. Now, they moved with greater professionalism, leapfrogging between covers and keeping the appropriate distances. Indeed, El Fanta had given it his all. Knox reported contact within 2 minutes. Has their command element in sight. El Fantasma is 3 cars back in the black Suburban. Fiercely protected. Logan led Cyrus. Provide them with something to ponder. The night was torn by a series of explosions that illuminated the battlefield but were not directed at the cartel forces. They could see what they were entering in the sudden light. Every approach is covered by defensive positions, and kill zones are positioned precisely mathematically. Over their open channel, one of the cartel soldiers muttered, "Mother of God. The entire estate is fortified. Keep moving forward," El Fantasma's voice ordered. "All they want to do is frighten us. Launch the assault." Logan's soothing Spanish pierced through their frequency. "I had twice your number in zip ties or corpse bags 43 minutes ago. I was being gentle at the time. Final caution. Pull out. Or suffer the same outcome." The advance of the cartel forces faltered as they hesitated. El Fanta's reaction was swift and severe. One of his own soldiers had stopped moving and he shot him. "The next coward will die at my hands," he yelled. "Go ahead and murder them all." With a groan, Logan returned to his team's channel. "We tried, you can't say. Cyrus? I have something unique for them," the demo specialist said. "Do you recall our Fallujah trick? Take action." The night burst into well-planned mayhem. Though they weren't intended to kill, the explosions' chain reacted all across the battlefield. They were tactical and accurate, obstructing escape routes, dividing units, and causing fear and confusion. With a deliberate crack of his weapon, Knox stated, "They're spread too thin, taking targets of opportunity." Logan moved with the precision and calculation of a ghost through the darkness. He was never spotted by the 2 cartel soldiers. They were moving forward 1 minute, and then they were unconscious. "Who are you people?" Over the radio came the thunderous voice of El Fanta. Logan's answer was sharp and icy. "You really wanted this farm? Greetings from it. I'll tell you why I was formerly referred to as Phantom." The real phase of the struggle was about to begin. The most skilled and seasoned murderers had been brought by the cartel, but they were going to discover the distinction between soldiers and murderers. Between armed thugs and men who had honed their fighting skills over decades. El Fanta was shouting commands in the distance, attempting to retake control of a battlefield that was quickly devolving into anarchy. However, Logan had battled in environments where dread could be used against its bearers, where chaos was a weapon, and where darkness was an ally. Logan reminded his team to come to us, give them the impression that they were winning, and then demonstrate to them why a Delta operator's house should not be threatened. This time there would be no holding back as the actual struggle got underway. The onslaught of El Fanta was like a thunderstorm. The night was illuminated by automatic weapons fire, with large caliber rounds blasting through Logan's perimeter defenses. His troops advanced with excellent accuracy while concealing their advance with suppressing fire. This was not the initial wave's careless attack. This military effort was well coordinated. With measured shots from his rifle, Knox reported that there were several teams at 9 o'clock. They're maneuvering and firing appropriately. These aren't thugs from cartels. Through his thermal scope, Logan observed El Fanta's soldiers setting up support positions. He revealed that they were former Mexican special forces. Observe their movements. They have previously done this. A rocket burst against Logan's barn as it raced through the night. The message was obvious, but the framework held and was reinforced just for this situation. The cartel had stopped playing. Cyrus yelled, "They're probing our defenses, searching for areas of weakness. Do you want me to dissuade them?" "Not yet," Logan said. "Permit them to exert further force." The sound of El Fanta's voice echoed throughout the battlefield. "You can't hide forever. We're going to burn everything you own." In retaliation, Logan fired a well-placed shot that destroyed the cartel boss's reputation. The battlefield returned to darkness. Darkness for which Logan's squad has trained for many years. According to Knox, a three-man team was attempting to flank east. Logan said, "I see them." Cyrus gives them a thought-provoking idea. Several charges exploded, hurting rather than killing. Nash's field of fire was directly in front of the flanking team. 3 times his mute MP5 talked. 3 bodies struck the floor. Zane cautioned that they are now better coordinated. Encrypted communications, several channels. These are experts. Logan strolled through his land with deliberate steps, like a shadow. A machine gun nest was being built up by 2 cartel soldiers. Favorable fields of fire and a favorable position. They didn't anticipate him. A neck attack defeated the first, and a precise takedown he had acquired in advanced hand-to-hand combat defeated the second. Knox shouted for the command vehicle to move. Relocating El Fantasma. Robust security detail. Let him, Logan said. He's trying to find a trend. Let's offer him one. The conflict entered a new stage. The men of El Fantasma were good. Although it was evident that they had previously engaged in urban battle, Logan's crew had written the book on this type of warfare. The cartel forces always ended up in a trap when they believed they had discovered an advantage. "You're 2 o'clock, RPG team," Zane yelled. Rockets shrieked overhead as Logan rolled behind cover. The blasts were huge, expertly made explosives. These were not gangsters on the streets dressed in illegal clothing. It was military equipment. Priority target Knox, get rid of them RPGs. The sniper grunted, a little busy. 3 squads are attempting to flank me. Cyrus? On it. The night was illuminated by more explosions. In a calculated explosion that left the RPG team unharmed but sent their weapons flying, they vanished. Only decades of practice could accomplish precision demolitions. El Fantasma's frustration was growing. Despite his soldiers being taken or dying, they were unable to acquire a firm grip on their adversaries. Every advance encountered opposition from unanticipated sources. Before they could take use of any tactical advantage, it vanished. He ordered them to push forward. Only 5 men are present. The numbers are in our possession. Logan's voice broke through their command channel. When it comes to ghosts, numbers don't mean much. Tonight, how many guys are you willing to lose? He was met by a burst of automatic fire. Logan did not recoil. He had already shifted out of that position, waiting for the answer. His suppressed gun fired precise shots at 2 additional cartel soldiers. According to Nash, the west sector is becoming heavier. They're exerting a lot of effort. That's their ploy, Logan said. Knox, keep an eye on the east. Their actual attack is coming from there. As it turned out, their best operatives were moving stealthily through the eastern approach while 1 squad pushed hard from the west. It was a good strategy that would have been effective against the majority of opponents. Knox muttered, "I count 12. The elite team, acting like experts. These are their finest." "Good," Logan said. "Nash, Cyrus, move to the east. Hold your fire till I hit you, Knox. Let's demonstrate to them what true experts are capable of." Using all available cover and keeping precise spacing, the elite cartel crew moved with remarkable ability. Logan set his trap as they were halfway to their goal. The night was lighted by Cyrus charges, which were confusing but not harmful. Knox fired from his high vantage point before the cartel operators could correct their night vision. Each bullet found its target, removing knees and shoulders with surgical accuracy yet leaving the victim disabled rather than dead. Logan said, "Clean them up," and Nash slid in quickly, securing the injured operators. El Fantasma's voice was tight with anger that was hardly under control. "Who are you people? You really ought to have done your homework," Logan said coolly. Inquired as to who owned the farm and why it had never been successfully attacked. A fresh sound pierced the darkness. Helicopter rotors. Zane warned, "They're bringing in air support, boss." Logan grinned just as planned. "Cyrus?" "Yes, I have a unique item for helicopters." "Simply state the time." The helicopter's headlight pierced the night as it swept in low. Using a minigun, the door gunner opened and sowed a path of devastation over Logan's land. However, the crew was also ready for this. Logan ordered now. Cyrus set off a unique charge. It's a huge flashbang made especially for airplanes, not an explosion. The pilot jerked the stick back, briefly blinded. The gunner's aim was disrupted by the abrupt movement. Knocks. The rifle of the sniper shattered once. The helicopter was plunged back into darkness as the spotlight exploded. The minigun was rendered inoperable by 2 more accurate shots. Logan informed the pilot that there were 2 options, either you crash or you land safely. "You have an option." The pilot of the chopper chose to be wise rather than brave and retreated. El Fantasmo was on the ground, yelling commands with ever-increasing urgency. His men were becoming less cohesive, his air support was being forced away, and his top team was down. "How many more men are you prepared to give up?" Logan inquired via their channel. "How many people must you kill before you recognize your error?" The reaction was instantaneous. An enormous volley of automatic weaponry. Logan, however, had already made his way to a different location, vanishing into the night. His ability to emerge anywhere, strike without warning, and disappear before the enemy could react earned him the nickname Phantom 20 years ago. He was reminding them why tonight. With icy rage, El Fantasmo's voice broke through the confusion. "Set everything on fire. All of it should be burned." In an attempt to deny Logan's crew their well-prepared positions, his troops used incendiary weaponry. Phosphorus and thermite lit up the night, transforming the battlefield into a smoke and fire hellscape. Knox noted, moving as flames engulfed his former sniper nest, "They're getting desperate. Making errors." Logan cautioned. "Men who are desperate can be unpredictable." "What are you seeing, Zane?" While the main force continues to drive forward, they are dividing into 3 groups and attempting to flank through the burning zones by deploying their strongest units throughout. As the cartel launched satchel charges on the exterior walls, a huge explosion shook the farmhouse. The message was apparent, but the reinforced structure held. They had finished probing and were prepared to demolish everything. Nash yelled, "Sir, we need to evacuate the wounded. The holding area is becoming too near to these fires." In a matter of seconds, Logan analyzed the tactical situation. "Cover the east approach, Knox. Give us a little time, Cyrus. Go back to position 3, everyone else. Tonight, we won't lose anyone." Cyrus spoke in a somber tone. "I have a specific item saved for this. You might want to shield your eyes." There were several chained explosions throughout the site, but these were distinct. They were so dazzling that anyone looking in their direction was momentarily dazzled by the walls of light created by the magnesium. Logan's team made a fighting withdrawal during the commotion, relocating their injured and detainees to a storm basement that was constructed specifically for this purpose. With a steady crack of his weapon, Knox observed, "They're pushing hard on the west side. These men are unique. The elite killing squad of the cartel. Their strategies are familiar to me from the briefings." "Los Fantasmas," said Logan. "The personal death team of El Fantasma. Former Mexican Special Forces members who went awry. They are good." "Not good enough," Knox yelled back, punctuating his statement. The murder squad advanced gracefully and fluidly, hiding behind the fires. They had everything they needed. Military-grade weapons, sophisticated body armor, and thermal imaging. These were not thugs from cartels. They were expert murderers. "Contact," yelled Zane. 3 members of the killing squad had broken through the inner wall and were heading deadly straight for the command center. They used well-coordinated fire to pin Logan as he attempted to intercept. Logan yelled out, "Not much help here," surprisingly composed in spite of the bullets piercing his surroundings. "Working on it," said Cyrus. Beneath the killing squad, the ground exploded, not with bombs, but with dirt and pressurized air. Their formation was broken by a blast that was unsettling but not deadly. Logan quickly took advantage and closed the gap. It was a short but vicious struggle. Logan had spent decades perfecting close-quarters combat, but the other members of the death squad were skilled shooters. In the first, it came down to a disarm, knife, neck strike, and strike. Logan's elbow hit the good place behind his ear after the second managed to land a strong blow. The third, who was obviously their hand-to-hand expert, proved more difficult. The man squared up in a fighter's stance and remarked in accented English, "It's impressive, but you're still just an old man." The specialist was rendered senseless on the ground by Logan's lightning-fast combination. "Old age and betrayal, child." "We have a problem," Zane interrupted. "Thermals are revealing something significant. They have a big autocannon on a technical, oh no." The night was broken by the roar of the 20mm cannon, which bullets were strong enough to penetrate Logan's fortified fortifications. This time, the goal was total destruction rather than reclaiming the farm. "Can you get a shot, Knox?" "No, they need a different approach because they have it too well protected." Logan was quick to think. Despite its destructive power, the cannon had flaws. "Do you recall Serbia, Cyrus? That arsenal? The tank-wielding one?" "Yes, it was. This is headed in a direction I appreciate. Are you able to do it?" "Like the old days, boss. I need 2 minutes." Across their communications, El Fantasma's voice roared. "See? Those who resist end up like this. This place will be reduced to ash by us." Logan had resisted worse, but the autocannon's destructive volley persisted. "Connect me to their frequency, Zane. It's time to give our friend an explanation." "The channel's open." Logan spoke in a cool, businesslike tone. "That is an amazing firearm, likely taken from a military storage facility and manufactured in Russia. Very good against structures, but not so good against approaching objects." "You're done," Phantasma yelled. "Your fortifications are crumbling. Take a look to your left." Just in time to see Cyrus' astonishment, the cartel chief did. They assumed the old barn was simply burning, but then it abruptly disclosed its secret. With its force directed directly toward the technician, the entire edifice had been set up as a giant directional bomb. Destroying would have been too risky, thus that was not the intention of the explosion. Rather, it produced a tremendous pressure wave that flipped the car, making the cannon ineffective and forcing El Fantasma's troops to seek shelter. Logan declared, "That was our justification to maintain good relations. If you push too much, we'll cease being kind. Take them all out." El Fantasma yelled, but his voice suddenly carried a hint of terror. His strongest troops were down, his heavy weapons were being methodically destroyed, and his soldiers were either dying or surrendering. Nash yelled, "Boss," and there was movement in the tree line, suggesting that they were deploying their reserve troops. "Good," Logan said. "It's about time they made all the commitments. You know what to do, Knox." Instead of murdering, the sniper's rifle started to systematically disable vehicles, weapons, and equipment. Every shot was designed to limit the cartel's options and compel them to react in predictable ways. "They're retreating," Zane said. Assembling again around their command car. With the fire still raging throughout his land, Logan checked his ammunition. His crew was worn out but not defeated, the farm was damaged but not destroyed, and El Fantasma had just committed his worst error by gathering all of his soldiers in one place. Logan ordered all units to get ready for the last stage. "Recall that we are no longer merely protecting. It's time to demonstrate to them why a cartel is not appropriate for a Delta Force battle." El Fantasma and his crew were going to have a lot worse night. They believed that by making Logan's squad retrench, they were winning. Rather, they were directly entering the trap that he had been laying since the start. Logan observed El Fantasma's troops assembling precisely where he desired, around their command van. Concentrating his last strength, the cartel chief believed he was being clever. Rather, he would simply concentrate all of his resources in a single kill zone. Logan ordered all units to follow the Phoenix Protocol. The recognitions from his squad came one after the other. During their tenure on active duty, they had practiced this situation numerous times. "Watch out for some fireworks," Cyrus said. "We didn't use those charges earlier, right? They're going to have to prove themselves." Knox's tone was professional and icy. "Map of the target area. On their command and control components, I have clear shots." Logan reminded them that we are looking for survivors. They must return with our message. With surgical accuracy, the counterattack got underway. Cyrus' charges exploded one after the other, isolating rather than killing. The cartel forces were directed precisely where Logan desired them to go by walls of smoke and fire that blocked escape routes. What are they doing? As he watched his meticulously placed soldiers become unexpectedly ensnared in overlapping fields of fire, El Fantasma demanded. Through their channel, Logan responded, "Teaching you about real combat. Listen carefully. Professionals operate in this manner." First to speak, Knox's weapon fired 3 accurate bullets, destroying their communications array. Then came their car engines, each turned off with deliberate efficiency. Now the cartel forces were blind, deaf, and motionless. "Do you believe that this makes a difference?" El Fantasma yelled, yet there was a hint of panic in his voice. "I have more men. Additional materials." Logan said, "Not anymore," as Zane's electronic warfare suite began to activate, causing static to fill their frequency. "State police are currently intercepting your reinforcements. It's incredible what occurs when someone offers useful information on cartel activity." Predictably, the cartel chief ordered his men to launch an all-out attack. Logan's squad, however, had prepared for this very situation. Through the commotion and smoke, they moved like ghosts, coming and going as they pleased. Front of contact. A cartel soldier fired at shadows while screaming. Logan had already left, his blows deadly inaccurate. Before they knew where he was, 3 more fell, and by then, he had moved once more. In Spanish, another soldier exclaimed, "They're not human. They can be found anywhere." El Fantasma ordered them to keep battling, but his power was eroding. Although his men were seasoned combatants, they had never encountered such a situation. An adversary that appeared out of thin air, struck without notice, and disappeared before they could react. Over the comm, Nash's voice crackled. "They are breaking formation, sir. The east sector is beginning to operate." Logan said, "Heard them. Discourage all heroes, Knox." The shot struck the feet of those attempting to escape as the sniper's weapon cracked slowly. It was an obvious message. "Remain where you are or worsen." Logan told the cartel men, "You're trapped in here with us. However, we are not confined here with you. The trap is ourselves." Cyrus's subsequent charges were an excellent example of this. The surviving cartel forces were divided into separate pockets by deliberate detonations, each of which was cut off from reinforcements and subjected to accurate fire from various directions. Zane reported that the Western group was surrendering. "The Eastern group is. Hold on. The command vehicle moves. The El Fantasma is running away." "Allow him to run," Logan said. "He's exactly where we want him." 2 of his best men were taken by the cartel head, who used the confusion to evade the main battle. He had good movement. He had obviously been more than a commander. Logan, however, had also prepared for this. El Fantasma's escape route took him directly to a place that was ready. He was jogging 1 minute, and then he was confronted by Logan. This was an impressive operation, Logan added in a friendly tone. Center Mass was trained by his rifle. Good men, good gear, and sound tactics. However, you made a crucial error. What is that, too? With his hand creeping toward a concealed weapon, El Fantasma growled. You believed that terror had a one-way effect. Decades of war experience were evident in Logan's voice. Being the one who people dread is nothing new to you. You discover what true fear feels like tonight. The cartel chief drew his pistol in a rehearsed gesture and moved quickly. Logan was quicker, though. The weapon was knocked aside by a single accurate shot. El Fantasma's remaining guards were dropped by another. You are aware of the distinction between my men and yours? With El Fantasma scurrying back, Logan inquired, moving forward. Experience, training, and, above all, purpose. You battle for cash. We battle to achieve more. The war was coming to an end around them. Realizing the pointlessness of their stance, the majority of the cartel forces had given up. The remaining fighters were being neutralized and isolated in a methodical manner. Why did they call me Phantom, do you know? Logan's voice echoed throughout the battlefield as he inquired. Not because I was difficult to locate. Because it was already too late when you finally found me. El Fantasma reached for a backup weapon, making his last error. Logan's answer was prompt and accurate. The boss of the cartel fell, gripping his shoulder, his face showing disbelief at how fast it had happened. Logan told his squad to gather the survivors. I want them to clearly hear this. Logan stood in front of his crew, demanding their full focus as they picked up the remaining cartel forces. These were more than just defeated troops. Something they had never seen before was being witnessed by them. Logan declared, we chose precision over power, which is why you're alive. As long as you remember this lesson, you will live. This valley is safe. Not by police officers or firearms, but by something much more hazardous. They are men who have dedicated their lives to learning how to fight, not tougher, but smarter. Over the comm came Knox's voice. 10 minutes out, police officers are coming from the south. Perfect timing, Logan said. He turned back to the cartel forces that had been detained. Now you have an option. Run back to your bosses or stay and face American justice. In any case, get the word out. The kind treatment you received tonight won't be extended to the next cartel that attempts to capture this valley. El Fantasma gazed up at Logan with a mix of reverence and dread, still holding his injured shoulder. Who? Really, who are you? Logan grinned glumly. Just a farmer defending his property. Prior to it, though, I was the ghost who plagued guys who were superior to you. The next time someone proposes to move into this area, keep that in mind. Logan's squad got ready to disappear as police lights started to tint the sky. In addition to defending a farm, they had accomplished their mission by sending a message that would reverberate through the cartel ranks for years to come. The entire scope of the fight during the night was becoming apparent as dawn broke over the Montana mountains. Logan's yard was peppered with burning cars, their smoke blending with the mist of the morning. Nash kept watch over the 37 apprehended cartel members who were zip-tied in bunches as Cyrus and Knox fortified the area. The actual job was just getting started, but the battle was finished. Zane reported from his command station that the state police would arrive in 3 minutes. They are around 20 minutes ahead of the FBI. They are quite intrigued by our visitors. With a tactical eye, Logan inspected his land and calculated damages. The barn stood despite being torched. Its fortified framework had served its purpose. Despite being severely damaged by fire, the house was nonetheless structurally sound. Years of meticulous construction had paid off in his defensive positions. Nash, who was kneeling next to El Fantasma, yelled, "Sir. Although he is stabilized, a hospital will eventually be necessary." When the cartel boss looked up at Logan, his haughtiness gave way to something more respectful. "We could all have been killed by you." Logan checked the zip ties and said, "Wasn't the point. Messages are not carried by dead men. You're going to share what happened tonight with all the cartels from here to Sinaloa." The valley was filled with the sound of police sirens. Logan looked to his group. "Cyrus Knox. Reverse the fade. There's no need to add more questions to make everything more difficult. You're our medic who works with inmates, Nash. Wipe anything delicate, Zane. I will deal with the locals." The caravan led by Sheriff Cooper arrived first. 2 tactical units and 4 patrol cars. The sheriff emerged, surveying the battlefield with a look of surprise and wonder on his face. Cooper, Logan, and Jesus Christ breathed. "What happened here when we received reports of gunshots and explosions?" Logan casually said, "Had some uninvited guests. They have a hard time accepting rejection." Cooper strolled around the perimeter, observing the cars that were destroyed, the cartel members who had been apprehended, and the precise damage done to particular targets. It was more than simply a gunfight. There was more to this. Logan clarified, "They came looking for an easy target. Instead, I discovered something different. This group will be of interest to your FBI pals. They belong to the gang that has been causing havoc in the valley. The ones we were unable to touch since we were unable to establish anything." Cooper's gaze grew strained. "You seem to have demonstrated a lot." Nash walked over with his medical equipment. "I need to tend to several injured people here, Sheriff. Nothing urgent, however they ought to see a hospital." Cooper dialed ambulances on his radio. His deputies' reactions to the spectacle were a mixture of professional obligation and hardly disguised awe. All of the cartel members were still alive and had been skillfully wounded in non-lethal ways. Cooper said, "Your guests have been busy looking at weapons and ID cards. Mexican military-grade firearms, sophisticated communications equipment, and special forces gear. It's larger than we anticipated." "Look at the barn," Logan said. "Discovered some intriguing documents. It could be useful for your other research." Documents that connected the cartel to local crimes, property seizures, and accidents that had afflicted the valley were meticulously planted by Zane. Enough proof to expose their whole scheme. El Fantasma observed the police activities with disinterest. "Nothing is changed by this." Logan interrupted him, saying, "The cartel will do exactly what we tell them. Because we won't be so kind the next time if they don't. If we truly intended to kill people, just think of what we could do." Senior investigators, evidence response teams, and serious-looking agents in tactical gear started to arrive in FBI trucks. Logan took note of their weapon handling and approach habits. Desk jockeys were not what these were. Their A-team had been deployed. Hunter, Mr. A female agent with the insignia that read Special Agent Sarah Martinez, came up. "We will require a statement regarding the events that transpired here." "Of course," Logan said. "Even so, it's fairly easy. My farm was taken by them. I protected my property." Martinez scanned the battlefield with his eyes. With enough proof to bring down their entire regional organization, several disabled cars, injured suspects exhibiting consistent non-lethal injury patterns, and military precision. For one farmer, that's a long night's labor. "Grew up hunting." Logan gave a shrug. "I was fortunate." "Fortunate?" Martinez's eyebrows went up. "For months, we have been assembling evidence against these individuals. Was unable to approach them. Then, in a single night, you not only eliminate their whole attack force but also provide us with easy-to-use intelligence. Sometimes everything just falls into place." The agent was professional enough to not press the issue, even though it was obvious that she didn't buy it. "The scene will need to be processed. Forensics. Pictures. Statements from witnesses. You get it?" Take as much time as you need, Logan said. Simply keep an eye on the north field. After all the excitement, there was some unstable ground there. Martinez acknowledged the warning for what it was and nodded. Official reports would not include all of the evidence. There were some things better left unsaid. Logan's covert squad observed from undisclosed locations as police processed the scene. They had fought in non-existent locations and carried out actions that would never be documented. This was no exception. Sheriff Cooper rejoined Logan and remarked, "You've made quite a mess. I must ask, though, are you certain that this is the end of it?" Logan watched as FBI agents encircled El Fantasma as he was placed into an ambulance. "Sheriff, they're business people. They learned tonight that it is not a good idea to advance into this valley. Terrible business. They will also discover why some veterans never truly retire if they are slow learners." Disguised as a local paramedic, Nash came forward with a medical package. "The property is obvious, so the evidence teams won't be caught off guard, Mr. Hunter." As the sun rose higher over his damaged but unbeaten property, Logan nodded. It was the best the cartel had brought. Professional murderers, former special forces, and military equipment. In terms of numbers and firepower, they had the upper hand. However, they had discovered the hard way that strength alone isn't always enough to win a conflict. As he saw his officers take pictures of disabled cars, Cooper thought, "You know. Everyone in town was constantly curious about you. Solitary farmer who was quiet. However, something about you seemed too distinct." "Just a man guarding his house," Logan said. However, they were both aware that it went beyond that. The message transmitted this evening would reverberate throughout the continent's criminal groups. There are some people you don't threaten and some lines you don't cross. This would make the valley safer. Logan's squad had reminded themselves that their abilities had not diminished over time, and the cartel had learned their lesson the hard way. They had demonstrated that predators who don't appear to be very dangerous can occasionally be the most harmful. By the end of the afternoon, only a few FBI evidence teams remained in the area. Logan's farm was littered with debris, bullet holes, and burnt earth from the battle. However, the damage presented a different picture to his seasoned eye. One of skill over violence, of accuracy over strength. From his observation post, Knox reported over a secret line that the main evidence sweep was completed. Nothing that we didn't want them to uncover was discovered by them. Logan saw the final FBI car drive away down his drive while enjoying a cup of coffee on his patio. "How is the buzz, Zane?" From his concealed command post, Zane said, "Cartel frequencies are dead quiet. But police bands that have been intercepted are getting brighter. It appears that there were other people being rounded up besides our buddies from last night. All around the valley, state police are attacking cartel properties." Cyrus appeared content as he stepped out from the tree line. Finished cleaning up the final extra surprises. "Although it's okay to resume regular farming, you might want to hold off on planting anything in the south field. I need to settle a couple areas." With his medical kit put away, Nash joined them. 37 cartel members were apprehended, all of whom had non-lethal injuries, according to the final casualty report. Even by our standards, the work was precise. Logan noted that they arrived with the intention of fighting farmers. Learned what it's like to deal with experts instead. Sarah Bennett's truck pulled up on the road and slowly approached. Logan gave his troops a nod. It was time to keep up appearances. Sarah pulled up, and they faded back into their positions. She jumped out of her truck and screamed out, "Logan! Everyone in the town is discussing what transpired. They claim that you defeated the entire cartel on your own." Logan grinned a little. "Narratives are inflated. Just protected my stuff, nothing more. Don't give that to me." Sarah had keen eyes. "I witnessed the shooting and heard the blasts. My brother is a member of the tactical unit of the state police. This was professional, military-grade opposition, he said. Farmers sometimes know more than people think, Logan said thoughtfully. Coffee? Sarah surveyed the farmhouse, taking in the exact pattern of destruction, the gunshot holes in the walls. Not just here, but all throughout the valley, the cartel is fleeing in terror and abandoning properties. They made a wise business choice. Wasn't this about more than your farm? Sarah inquired. This applied to the entire valley. Logan thought about his answer. To put it mildly, some people needed to understand that not every territory is worth pursuing. In Logan's hidden earpiece, Knox's voice cracked. A car is coming. Government plates on a black SUV. It appears that our Langley friends would like to speak. You might want to go home, Sarah, Logan replied gently. Conversations will be simpler if there are fewer witnesses and more official people arriving. Phillips, a CIA agent, showed up after Sarah left. He was polished, professional, and keenly interested in what had happened the night before. What a show, Phillips said, refusing coffee. It reminds me of something I once read. Kandahar classified file. Group of operators with expertise in eradicating issues without leaving any trace. Logan gave a neutral response, sounds like an interesting read. The problem is that team doesn't actually exist, Phillips added. Similar to what occurred here last night, it will not be officially recognized. Not in the manner that local law enforcement believes it did, either. Phillips nodded, thank you for the professional courtesy. I just wanted to confirm that we are in agreement. And send a message, too. Colonel Hayes, an old friend of yours, says the perimeter you established makes him think of Serbia. Logan grinned to himself, but his face remained unchanged. There were some previous debts to pay off. A few old favors came through. It would make the valley safer. Logan's team regrouped in the barn after Phillips left. The moment had arrived for future decisions. Examining the damage from the blast, Cyrus said, the place will need to be rebuilt. Might be useful for that. I have some suggestions for enhancements. The cartel is running, Zane continued. However, they may not run indefinitely. It might be worthwhile to stay here. Knox meticulously cleaned his gun. Been considering retirement nonetheless. There are good shooting ranges in Montana. Nash thought, could use a clinic in the area. Local physicians are aging. Logan turned to face his crew, the guys who had battled beside him all over the world and who had immediately rushed to his aid. This is not required of you. In my opinion, Knox retorted, we have fought in other people's countries all our lives. Perhaps it's time we stood up for something more local. There was no more discussion before the choice was reached. Not only was the valley free of the cartel, but it had gained more. It had acquired guardians with highly specialized abilities. El Fantasma, what about it? Cyrus inquired. He will finally speak. Logan shrugged, let him. Everything he knows will be out of date by the time he does. Who would believe him anyway? A cartel leader saying a group of retired Delta operators beat him? In relation to that, Zane looked at his phone. We received word from our federally detained friends. We are sharing our message. Already, 3 more cartels have withdrawn their activities from nearby counties. It appears that no one wants to take the chance of encountering Montana's spirits. As the sun sank, Logan took a final stroll around his property. They would fix the harm. The war signs would disappear. However, a fundamental shift had occurred. The valley had been marked, not as a simple target, but as a site where dangers were confronted with skill and accuracy rather than with force, and where shadows fought back. Very different from retirement, Nash said, echoing him. Will you miss living a tranquil life? Who says it must be different? Logan answered. The farm still needs to be operated. The land still requires care. We may have some additional activities planned. The group exchanged a knowing glance. They have fought conflicts that most people were unaware of while living in the shadows. They now had the opportunity to apply those abilities to a more intimate endeavor. Defending a house, a neighborhood, or a way of life. Alert as ever, Ranger padded up. Throughout the battle, the German shepherd had shown his value by keeping captives in order and alerting the commander to flanking moves. He stood prepared now, as though he understood that this was a fresh start rather than the finish. Those cartel properties they're abandoning might be worth looking into at the auction, Cyrus replied carefully. Good positions for tactics. Logan grinned. The tactic pleased the soldier in him. Building a protective cordon around the valley and controlling important terrain. Keeping decent land in the proper hands appealed to his inner farmer. With his sniper's eyes sweeping the horizon, Knox said, "There's no doubt about it. This valley will never be viewed the same way by anyone again. The unknown can be the most effective deterrent. The potential for something more hazardous than they seem to lurk behind every farmer and rancher." The sky was painted in tones of gold and purple by the Montana sunset. 24 hours prior, when the cartel believed they were assaulting an ordinary farmer, it displayed the same colors. The hard way was how they had learned their lesson. Certain wolves can be lethal without showing their teeth. Some fighters can be deadly without wearing uniforms. Furthermore, not all valleys are shielded by mountains alone. Duskwood Valley started to exhibit minor changes a week after the war. As Knox studied the Henderson property, which had once been controlled by cartel personnel, his trained eye noticed more than just deserted buildings. Logan observed his old friend strolling about the property, charting defensive positions and sight lines with the same accuracy he had previously applied in fighting areas. Later that night, Knox observed from Logan's repaired barn that ridge has a view of 3 key access roads. 2 miles of unobstructed views in all directions. The previous owners had to depart quickly. Cartel documents that were left in filing cabinets. Cyrus raised his eyes from his valley designs. Next week is the county auction. These properties will typically sell for a low price. The shell corporations of the cartel are eager to get rid of them. Logan looked at the valley map they had put across his workbench and said, "It's amazing what happens when criminals lose their nerve." Former cartel properties of strategic value were underlined by red marks. The security cameras showed Sarah Bennett's truck driving toward Logan's farm. They had anticipated this discussion. She was too intelligent to continue believing the tale of the lucky farmer indefinitely. "Retain cover," Logan said. As Sarah pulled up, his gang dispersed easily, turning into simple farm hands and visiting friends. She climbed down from her pickup and called out, still patching bullet holes. She observed the repairs and noted how expertly done they were. "The majority of them," Logan said. "You can have fresh coffee if you'd like." Sarah looked closely at Logan's face inside. Yesterday's town meeting was fascinating. There are numerous properties up for auction. Some are anxious about potential buyers. Logan poured coffee and added, "Heard your brother's department cleared them all. No more cartel gifts." Sarah leaned closer, "They're not worried about that." "Logan, please don't tell me it was a lucky shooting, I need to know what actually happened here that evening." Logan thought about his answer. Since Sarah had shown herself to be reliable, some facts couldn't be kept secret in a small town. "What do you suppose transpired?" "I believe the cartel didn't simply bump into a farmer," she added softly. "I believe they encountered someone who was well versed in fighting them. A trained individual. Experience." Logan observed Knox and Cyrus talking about property lines through his window, their movements still bearing the unconsciously precise accuracy of skilled operators. People aren't always who they seem. That can be advantageous at times. Sarah gestured to the men outside, the others. "Surely they're more than just pals lending a hand with repairs. Is it important?" Sarah's face grew softer. "Logan, the valley is shifting. People are more secure. As if somebody were keeping watch over them. Defending them. Protecting good land is worthwhile. Overhead, a helicopter flew. Near the Canadian border, the National Guard is monitoring cartel activity. Logan, however, was aware that they were actually checking on something else. Some authorities have been reinterested in the security of the valley after the conflict. Sarah casually noted that Martinez had visited the diner yesterday. That agent from the FBI? She wanted to know about you. Regarding your history. Logan admitted that Agent Martinez does an excellent job. She is aware that some stories are best left unexplored. When Nash's truck arrived, it was full of medical supplies. He was already undercover as the new doctor in the valley. His experience in war medicine was a great fit for rural healthcare, and the old clinic required someone younger. Sarah mentioned that more new folks were moving in. The Wilson place was purchased by that former Army sniper. Doc Peterson's clinic is being taken over by a combat medic. There were even speculations that the old radio station was being inspected by a security consultant. Logan smiled to himself, but his face remained neutral. As they established their duties and held tactical locations across the valley, his crew was blending in flawlessly. Finally, he stated that change isn't always a terrible thing. At times, it's precisely what a location requires. Sarah looked at him for a while. You weren't fighting the cartel for the first time, were you? One of you. Let's assume we've practiced. There was a truck on the road. Zane is back after crossing the valley to install communications equipment. In actuality, he was building a surveillance system that would deter potential intruders. Sarah recognized, you're constructing something here. Logan concluded, you're transforming the entire valley into a community, not just fixing damage. One that is self-defense capable. How did you keep it safe that evening? Knowing you don't have to fight at all is sometimes the best defense. Bullets may not always be as effective as reputation. Slowly, with comprehension emerging in her eyes, Sarah nodded. You're letting people figure it out gradually because of this. Isn't the speculation and the rumors all a part of it? Logan grinned, smart woman. It's amazing how crooks steer clear of locations where they could find more than they expected. Knox, dressed as a mere farmhand, walked in with a polished demeanor. We've checked the perimeter, Logan added. There is silence. The instinctive sir who mentioned military discipline, Sarah, spotted the slip. Her face conveyed confirmation of suspicions rather than astonishment. Quietly, she said, your secret is safe. However, it's not really a secret anymore, in my opinion. Not to the important ones. Thanks for that, Logan said. The valley will require those who can recognize trouble before it arises and who understand discretion. Like last week when I saw that cartel scout. Both men turned their attention to Sarah once she revealed this. Cyrus took care of it, so don't worry. I might add, quite professionally. No one will be receiving any reports from Scout. Logan and Knox looked at each other. They had made the right decision. In addition to being perceptive, Sarah was already a member of the valley's new security system. Logan proposed that it would be time for us to talk more about the future of the valley and how individuals like you who are concerned about this property might contribute to its preservation. Sarah grinned, already having those chats. What made me come here today, in your opinion? Logan, the community is organizing. We're learning to look out for one another and recognize things that don't belong because of you and your buddies. Outside, the mountains that had guarded the valley for thousands of years were lowering the Montana sun. The cartel had been defeated in those same mountains, and now they would see something new, a community that had been vulnerable would become self-sufficient. Logan admitted that times are changing. The valley is evolving alongside them. Sarah reassured him it was for the better. Thanks to a few veterans who chose to continue fighting, albeit in a new capacity. Logan's squad got back together in the barn as Sarah drove off. Their positions across the valley were all but guaranteed, and their cover identities were taking root. The makeover would be finished soon. Knox said, "She's sharp. Might be helpful." "It is already," Logan said. "The valley is receiving just what it needs, attentive individuals who recognize the value of security." Regarding security, Cyrus stepped in and offered some intriguing ideas for those additional properties as well as strategies to turn the entire valley into an early warning system. Logan looked at their map once again and nodded. This valley had been selected by the cartel due to its strategic importance. The community they had attempted to destroy would now be protected by those same strategic traits. It was quieter than it had been before the battle when the darkness descended on the property. Logan thought that often the greatest triumphs aren't those that involve using violence, but rather those that stop violence from ever happening again. 2 weeks after the conflict, Knox watched as residents showed up for what they believed to be a shooting club meeting at his recently purchased property, the former Wilson place. Most people wouldn't consider the converted barn to be a state-of-the-art training facility. To them, it was merely a location where a former military guy gave gun safety instruction. "Do you recall?" Knox spoke to the farmers and ranchers in attendance. "Prioritize accuracy over speed. Hunting is not the same as combat shooting. You must be ready for retaliating targets." Logan watched from the sidelines and noted how easily Knox incorporated sophisticated tactical training into fundamental shooting instruction. The concepts were the same even if they were teaching community people how to defend themselves rather than soldiers. Knox went on, "You are responsible for your property. It takes awareness, not simply firearms, to know how to defend it. An observation. Knowing your terrain." One of the pupils, Sarah Bennett, demonstrated her innate talent. 3 of the covert observation sites Logan's crew had set up throughout the valley were already visible to her. More significantly, she had not shared that information. Nash's clinic across the valley was now open. Though he was doing more than just treating patients, his wartime medical background was a natural fit for rural healthcare. Every guest was thoroughly assessed for potential as an ally or threat in addition to any medical concerns. Nash stated later at Logan's property that it was an interesting morning. Had a guest. Though his hands spoke for themselves, he claimed to be a traveling salesperson. Calluses that matched those from training with weapons. Scout for the cartel? While looking at security cams, Logan inquired. Most likely. Gave him medication to relieve his headache. Mild sedative. Zane is now monitoring his whereabouts. We shall see where he returns. Cyrus came out of his workshop, where he had been making adjustments to farm equipment. They appeared to most people to be typical harvesters and tractors. The secret compartments, bulletproof glass, and reinforced frames would go unnoticed. Complete the Bennett Place's renovations, Cyrus said. No one would notice until they looked closely, but Sarah's barn could now take a direct mortar hit. Logan gave a nod of approval. The alteration of the valley was going just as anticipated. Small adjustments that culminated in an unbreakable defensive system. Disguised as a ham radio enthusiast setup, Zane contacted from his communications center to report that the local sheriff had been asking questions. "I'm just interested in all the new individuals moving in, nothing aggressive." "Let him ask questions," Logan said. "It's better if he believes he is learning things on his own. Gives him a sense of involvement." A truck came up. Bill Henderson, a local rancher, seemed distressed. Logan recognized the look. The valley was beginning to see changes, and more people were attempting to understand them. Henderson climbed out of his pickup and yelled out, "Logan. Have a moment?" There was an odd occurrence that happened last night. Ranger rested on the porch, watchful yet at ease, as Logan guided him there. "Bill, what's on your mind?" "After dusk, we had some guests. I didn't recognize the 3 cars. They appeared to be about to start a fight when they halted at my gate." Henderson took a moment to gather his thoughts. Then the most bizarre thing occurred. I received a call from Knox at the former Wilson residence. Claimed that he might get noisy while practicing night shooting. Then, from someplace in the hills, I hear gunfire. Visitors were unable to depart quickly enough. Logan knew exactly what had happened, but he maintained a neutral demeanor. As usual, Knox had been on overwatch. Most likely, the guests were cartel scouts evaluating the recently installed defenses in the valley. Henderson went on, there have been a lot of odd things going on lately. All of the newcomers are military types. Installing security cameras on homes even sparked discussions about starting a community watch organization. Logan noted that times are changing. People are being more cautious in the wake of the cartel incident. Henderson gave a slow nod. The problem is, Logan, it doesn't seem dangerous. It seems, well organized. As if someone were watching out for us all. Coming together, communities, Logan said thoughtfully. Just watching out for each other. Henderson, however, was more astute than most people realized. According to Sarah Bennett, you deserve our gratitude. Explains your actions against the cartel that evening. It brought about a transformation. Sarah talks too much. Usually, Sarah is correct. Henderson stood up. Some of us have been discussing, listen. We wish to assist. We want to be involved in whatever you and your friends are doing to keep this valley safe. Logan took a close look at the rancher. Although he didn't talk about it much, Henderson had served in Vietnam. He would be knowledgeable enough to spot a military operation. Logan admitted, perhaps we could use a few more eyes and ears. Locals are aware of what belongs and what doesn't. Henderson disclosed that he had already formed a network. Farmers, ranchers, and even some residents of the town. Things caught our attention. Been monitoring strangers who come and go. Unusual behavior. Someone who might need to know could find that figure beneficial. Logan smiled a little to himself. Residents of the valley were actively participating in their own defense rather than merely receiving protection. Logan suggested that you visit Knox's residence tomorrow. Special training sessions are being led by him. Perhaps instructive. Logan's crew later convened to talk about this development after Henderson departed. With the help of the locals, the valley was changing more quickly than anticipated. They're organizing themselves, Knox said with approval. Establishing their own network of intelligence. Better than we anticipated, Zane continued. Our experience matched with local knowledge. Without appearing like one, Valley is turning into a formidable target. Cyrus laid out his most recent plans. 3 other homes submitted requests for structural upgrades. Even if they don't know who we are, they're finding out what we can provide. Do you think we should grow the business? Nash inquired. Additional instruction? More planning? Logan gave the question some serious thought. The people of the valley were demonstrating their worth as trustworthy individuals who were keen to defend their community. However, operational security was still very important. He made the decision to carefully grow. Maintain compartmentalization. Give them the impression that they are only keeping an eye on one another as nice neighbors. It is best if people are not aware of our entire potential. The group gave a collective nod. They had carried out operations in the most remote regions of the earth and fought battles in other countries. They now faced a different type of battle, one that preserved the look of everyday rural life while changing an entire village into something that could be defended in a unique way. Zane added, one more thing. Intercepted some conversations from cartels. The word about this valley is getting out. El Valle de los Fantasmas is the designation given to it. The Ghost Valley. Suppose it is cursed and guarded by ghosts that pursue cartel members. Logan grinned glumly. Reputation, rather than merely physical training, was sometimes the strongest protection. Permit them to think that ghosts exist. No otherworldly threat could compare to the reality of highly skilled operatives concealed among ordinary farmers. The valley's new defenses were put to the test for the first time on a calm Tuesday night. Tommy, the grandson of Bill Henderson, was the first to notice them. 3 unmarked SUVs are slowly traveling down the rural roads, pausing periodically to take pictures of residences. There was nothing particularly noticeable. The 16-year-old simply did what Knox had shown him to do. Just kept patching things up while sending a preset text message on his phone. The warning network throughout the valley came online in a matter of minutes. Farmers discovered reasons to be on their fields, collecting vehicle numbers and descriptions and inspecting irrigation systems. When Sarah Bennett happened to drive by in her pickup, her dashcam recorded the license plates. There was nothing to warn the onlookers that they had been compromised. Every movement appeared informal and organic. Zane reported from his command center that there were 4 men in the lead truck, keeping an eye on the influx of civilian reports. Trying to conceal it while armed. The 3rd car is hanging back, and the 2nd vehicle has camera equipment. This is likely a security detail. Logan was impressed by the response from the neighborhood as he watched the security footage. Nobody was taking on the attackers or acting heroic. As instructed, they were collecting intelligence. I received confirmation. Nash dialed. Compare 2 of these to the medical records of cartels. Low-level Tijuana operation enforcers. They are putting our defenses to the test to see if the stories are accurate. Over the secure channel, Knox's voice cracked. I have them within my reach. Do you want me to message you? Not yet, Logan said. Watch how our neighbors respond to this. The SUVs approached one of the estates that had once been controlled by the cartel after turning down a side road. They wouldn't call it that, but they were meeting the valley's first premeditated response. There were 3 other ranchers, including Bill Henderson, who appeared to be chatting casually by their trucks. Their placement was ideal. They created a natural choke point by blocking the route without seeming to do so. Henderson yelled as the SUVs came to a stop in the afternoon. You people appear to be lost. The window of the leading car rolled down, showing a man who was making a concerted effort to pass like a tourist. Merely taking in the properties. Do you have a lovely valley here? Yes, Henderson said politely. But shame about all the issues. To conceal his interest, the cartel scout made an effort. Issues? Yes, indeed. In the 1980s, the government established a testing ground. All of the soil is poisoned. Nothing can be grown safely. That explains why real estate is so inexpensive. They cannot be farmed. Unable to sell them. The prepared cover story made Logan smile. Even phony caution signs had been put by Cyrus. Overgrowth partially obscures it. Just noticeable enough for inquisitive guests to notice. The scouts for the cartels exchanged doubtful glances. This had not come up in their intelligence. Sarah Bennett's truck appeared behind them, seemingly impeding their escape. She helpfully noted that the EPA is in charge of the entire valley. Last year, there were some unpleasant situations. Calf with 3 heads. Crops with mutations. Everything has to be burned. Now the scouts were clearly uncomfortable. They would arrive expecting armed opposition and searching for indications of a military presence. Rather, they had to deal with amiable residents and a tale about environmental hazards that would render the site useless for cartel activities. The lead scout replied hastily, I think we took a wrong turn. I appreciate the warning. In an attempt to save their dignity as they retreated, they twisted around awkwardly. Sarah waved to them as they passed her truck while using her covert camera to take crisp pictures. Logan said on the radio, a little too much with the 3-headed calf. Did it get them moving? Sarah answered with a smile. The neighborhood kept up their informal stances as they saw the SUVs go, keeping tabs on every step. The scouts were unaware that they had activated cameras, motion sensors, and a whole tactical response squad concealed in the trees. Logan's squad convened later that night to discuss the event. The citizens had carried out a well-coordinated intelligence-gathering operation flawlessly, with no signs of training. Cyrus said the story about environmental contamination was clever. Difficult to confirm. The ideal justification for inexpensive land. Furthermore, no cartel will risk poisonous soil for their activities. Knox said that Henderson's team did a good job managing the interdiction. Postures for natural blocking. Various perspectives. They're gaining knowledge. Zane retrieved the security camera footage. Each of the 6 cartel members was verified via facial recognition. Their transportation experts typically search for new routes for smuggling, hoping to fully rule out this valley. The best aspect, Nash noted, is that they believe they have discovered the solution on their own. There are no indications of a military presence. No clear security. Just locals alerting them to dangerous terrain. Proud of the community's progress, Logan watched the video. They went from being victims to a well-coordinated defensive network in a matter of weeks. The cartel scouts had anticipated discovering either a plain military presence or an exposed valley. They had discovered something far more efficient instead. A community that was prepared but didn't seem to be. Do they intend to try again? After making sure she wasn't being followed, Sarah joined them and inquired. Probably a different group will, Logan said. However, they will always discover something that detracts from the valley's appeal. Environmental problems. Zoning issues. Archaeological locations that hinder progress. It is preferable for them to depart with the belief that the land is worthless than to be dubious about its defense. Knox said, Thompson's boys showed real promise today, in reference to the defense. When it peeled off, I saw their tail car. Kept a close eye on it without drawing attention. Including him in the advanced training group would be worthwhile. The valley was changing more quickly than they had anticipated, adding levels of protection beyond basic safety. They were teaching more than simply self-defense. Without ever coming across as aggressive, they were building a community that could recognize threats, obtain intelligence, and react correctly. Do you have anything else? Zane checked his monitors and reported. After our guests departed, the talk of the cartel increased. The story of contamination is being spread by them. They also add their own details. Claiming that even driving across the valley made their guys ill. Stories are becoming more and more popular. Excellent. Logan gave a nod. Let them construct our cover. Every outrageous tale discourages them from paying more attention to the actual situation. Sarah looked closely at the tactical display, which detailed the day's activities. You know, I thought we were only being trained for self-defense when you initially started. However, isn't this different? We're doing more than just protecting the valley. We're preventing the incorrect kind of attention from seeing it. Logan clarified that having a fence or a rifle isn't always the best defense. Convincing people that nothing is worth stealing might be difficult at times. Nothing worth looking into. The group scattered to their posts, continuing the unwavering attention to detail that had become second nature. The alteration of the valley was going just as anticipated. Not into a camp with guns, but into something much more advanced. A society capable of self-defense while maintaining an air of total innocence. As they watched the sun set, Nash said, "There's one thing that's certain. After today, no one will ever again view this valley in the same manner." Logan nodded, understanding that the community's natural reaction was the true triumph rather than the scouts' expulsion. They had developed into something equally effective, but they were not and would never be warriors. People who knew how to keep their house safe without ever coming across as dangerous. The valley had successfully completed its initial test. They would be prepared for the following test, which would be more difficult. Ultimately, the most effective defenses are the ones your adversaries are unaware of. Unexpectedly, word of the valley's resistance spread like wildfire across criminal networks. The reports were about unexplained equipment failures, poisoned soil, and unusual illnesses rather than armed conflict. With each retelling, Logan's crew developed a mythology that was more useful than any direct action could have been. According to a recent rumor, Zane revealed during his morning briefing that 3 cartel scouts went blind when simply driving past. Crops planted with stolen funds, according to another, wither and perish. The one about ghostly troops showing up on thermoscopes is my favorite. Knox grinned a little as he cleaned his firearm. When you let people's imaginations do the work for you, amazing things happen. However, not all of the interest was paranormal. Sheriff Cooper's face was concerned as he arrived to Logan's farm. Up until now, the local police had been kind but aloof, realizing that some questions were better left unsaid. Have some DEA people asking questions, Cooper stated without introducing himself. They want to know why all the criminal groups in the area determined that our valley was radioactive. Logan kept up his farmer's persona as he worked on fixing his tractor. I've heard rumors about poor soil or other environmental issues. Cooper sighed. Logan. I have 30 years of police enforcement experience. A well-coordinated defense operation is something I can recognize. In the same way that I am aware that the hunting mishaps that continue to occur for cartel scouts are not accidents. Sounds complex, Logan said gently. You must be occupied. That's it. It doesn't. From having a serious crime problem, the valley now has almost no crime. No organized crime, no narcotics, and no bloodshed. It appears as though a blank area has been added to the map. Ranger greeted Cooper with a friendly yet cautious pat over. The sheriff picked his next words carefully and scratched the dog's ears. Not just the DEA is interested. Analysts at the FBI are attempting to determine why this abruptly stopped being visible to illegal activities. They're discovering inconsistencies. Like newcomers with highly convenient backgrounds, training programs that closely resemble military counterinsurgency strategies, and communication equipment that is a little too advanced for farmers. At last, Logan put down his wrench and focused entirely on Cooper. They seem to be overanalyzing the situation. A community may simply choose to defend itself at times. By putting in place surveillance of the highest caliber. By conducting synchronized reactions to dangers. By disseminating false information that would embarrass intelligence services. Sarah's truck screamed up the drive before Logan could reply. It was no accident that she had come. She kept an eye on every approach to Logan's land and gave advance notice of any official guests. Sheriff? With joy, she called out. Are you here for the meeting on Community Watch? Surprised, Cooper turned. Watch the community? Yes, Sarah went on without incident. Logan has been assisting with our planning. Instructing people in emergency response, basic security awareness, etc. People wanted to be more prepared after all that unpleasantness with the cartels. Technically accurate but with little insight into the entire extent of their activities, it was the ideal cover narrative. Sarah was well versed. That's correct, Logan said. It's incredible what farmers can accomplish when they collaborate. Exchange information. Be mindful of one another. There is nothing difficult about it. Cooper understood the message as he glanced between them. Official channels might provide an explanation for the valley's evolution without disclosing its actual nature. He thought of the Community Watch program. People asking inquiries would find that to be quite illuminating. Particularly if it was well documented, held frequent meetings, and maintained records. Logan agreed that it probably should. It would even be beneficial to keep things official and have law enforcement scrutiny. Slowly, the sheriff nodded. Perhaps I could assist with it. It is preferable to have everything well documented and above board. Might potentially be eligible for some state funds for training initiatives. Sarah smiled. What a fantastic idea. We ought to arrange a formal meeting. Engage everyone. Logan's crew moved out of their places when Cooper departed. They had been listening to the entire exchange, prepared to answer if necessary. Smooth, Knox said. Give them a formal explanation that provides just enough detail. Nash noted that the sheriff is more shrewd than he appears. He's offering to keep our cover intact. Logan looked out his window at the valley. The evolution of the neighborhood has reached a turning point. Too good to keep hidden entirely. Too significant to reveal in detail. We adjust, he concluded. Allow them to see what they must. The Community Watch program provides us with legal protection for communications, monitoring, and training. How about the federal interest? Cyrus inquired. Let them see, Logan said. They'll discover precisely what we want them to. A well-structured program for community protection. Not much more. They turned to listen to the chirp of Zane's monitoring apparatus. On the northern boundary, there was movement. 3 cars. The scouts from previous week followed the same pattern. Logan told the network to be alerted. Let's demonstrate to the sheriff how an appropriate community watch organization deals with intruders. The reaction came quickly but subtly. Positions that provided a clear view of the incoming trucks gave farmers a motive to labor in their fields. After receiving advanced marksmanship instruction from Knox, the local hunting club started a planned target practice session. The valley could clearly hear the shots. Sarah reported that the contact team was in position. She had assumed responsibility for organizing the civilian reaction teams. Thompson is causing the delay in road maintenance. The most direct path into the valley was inevitably blocked and a municipal vehicle started to slowly repair the major access road. 3 separate observation points would have to be crossed by the suspicious cars. Recall that Logan sent a message to the civilian network. Today, we are only concerned citizens. Take note of everything. Don't respond to anything. The defense system in the valley had developed into something more advanced than basic security. A community capable of complete deniability, threat detection, tracking, and deterrence. There was a valid reason for every action. Each answer could be formally recorded. You know, Nash remarked reflectively as he observed the procedure. We carried out covert operations for years that no one could find out about. We are now operating a defense network that isn't actually there while remaining undetected. The truth is the best disguise, Logan said. We are assisting the community in self-defense. The rest is just information they don't require. As the sun rose over the Montana highlands, it observed farmers going about their daily tasks while secretly keeping an eye out for possible dangers. The valley has evolved into something special. It was a hybrid that incorporated the greatest features of both a military base and a civilian town. Allow federal agencies to conduct an investigation if they so choose. All they would discover is an exceptionally well-run community watch program. The others, such as the thermal scopes and the ghostly troops, would be left to conjecture and gossip. Logan thought that sometimes the best defense isn't what people see, but rather what they believe they see. Unexpectedly, the first official meeting of the Community Watch program attracted a lot of interest. In an attempt to blend in, 2 FBI agents sat in the rear of the town hall. Near the front, a DEA analyst took notes. An observer had even been sent by the state police. Logan continued to be a modest farmer who helped organize his neighbors while observing them all. He gave the assembled gathering an explanation of basic security awareness. Being aware of who belongs and who doesn't in our valley. Identifying questionable conduct. Nothing difficult. In his capacity as the local shooting club's retired Army sniper leader, Knox described their civilian training regimen. Each word was deliberately designed to sound commonplace while delivering a deeper meaning to those who are familiar with it. He stressed the importance of using the right radio methods. Having clear communication helps avoid miscommunication. Sarah oversaw the sign-up sheet, observing how some names made the federal agents tense. They were creating profiles in an effort to comprehend how the valley had changed from a hotbed of crime to an area that was impenetrable. At the North Checkpoint, movement. In Logan's hidden earpiece, Zane's voice was heard in a whisper. 2 SUVs. The Tijuana group followed the same pattern. As the valley's actual security network came online, Logan maintained a neutral countenance and carried on with his presentation. He observed farmers idly putting their machinery in blocking positions through the window, forming organic barriers that would compel the guests to follow well-traveled paths. As Logan explained to his audience, community awareness means working together. Every word has 2 meanings. Watching out for one another. Being prepared to react in any circumstance. When 3 nearby trucks abruptly left, driven by farmers who had heard the silent signal, the FBI officers looked at each other. Most onlookers thought it was individuals leaving a dull meeting. They were actually relocating to observation posts. Sarah, who had gone outside to answer a phone call, reported discreetly that she had eyes on the cars. Unquestionably a cartel, but a distinct gang. Markings from Colombia. As his crew organized a sophisticated defensive operation, Logan carried on with his presentation, going over standard neighborhood watch procedures. It was not a coincidence. This surveillance was purposefully planned to take place during their public meeting. He reminded the audience that everyone's contribution is essential to success. No lone wolves, no heroes. We are a team. The DEA analyst was scrawling frantically, presumably noticing the military tone of the wording. Let him do the analysis. They were just exceptionally well organized, and everything they were doing was entirely legal. Cars coming down Main Street, Knox whispered into the radio. Facial recognition is currently being used. As a wonderful pretext for the actual action taking place outside, the meeting went on. Logan watched his team's deployment and talked about emergency response protocols. His presentation was full of real tactical instructions that could be referenced verbatim in official reports. He clarified that the objective when dealing with questionable conduct is to watch and report, leaving intervention to the appropriate authorities. Sheriff Cooper's deputies showed there just in time, conducting a regular patrol that coincidentally resulted in the Colombian vehicles being intercepted. The cartel scouts were escorted out of the valley in a courteous but rigorous manner. They were observed and recorded by official channels. Logan reminded his audience that coordination with law enforcement is essential. Unaware that they were witnessing a live display of just how that collaboration operated, the FBI agents gave a nod of approval. Cooper approached Logan with a deliberately neutral demeanor after the meeting. The timing of those Colombian guests is interesting. Logan said in a low voice that timing is crucial, particularly when describing to federal observers how a genuine neighborhood watch program functions. Cooper verified that they purchased it. Ideal fusion of law enforcement collaboration and citizen organizing. Nearly flawless. Showing people exactly what they expect to see is sometimes the best method to conceal something. The sheriff gave a contemplative nod. We have an official Black Ops team stationed here, according to the DEA's theory. The FBI believes that we are conducting an authorized intelligence operation. No one suspects that we simply have farmers who are excellent collaborators. It's amazing what people can achieve when they are properly organized and motivated. Logan's team reconvened at his farm as the federal officials left. The procedure had gone well. Real security is upheld, legitimate cover is created, and possible threats are sidestepped without drawing attention to themselves. Zane checked his intelligence channels and reported Colombian traffickers attempting to move in. They see the Mexican cartel's withdrawal as an indication that the area is now open. Let them try, said Knox. Stories on environmental hazards are equally effective in Spanish and English. After following the federal officers to make sure they truly left the valley, Sarah arrived. They believe they have the answer and believe we are a formal program that they are unaware of. According to Logan, the best cover story is the one your targets make up for themselves. They'll overlook the obvious in favor of convoluted justifications. We are only more structured than people anticipate, but we are exactly what we seem to be. Nash came back from his clinic to join them. Have you heard anything noteworthy today? Bounties are being offered by the cartel for accurate information on the valley. Frantically trying to figure out why they are unable to establish themselves here. Leave them to wonder, Logan said. Force is less effective than mystery. They will squander time searching for untrue secrets while our true strength, community planning and organization, remains unseen. The sky turned purple and gold as the sun sank over the valley. Nothing had changed on the surface. Ranchers cared for their herds, farmers tilled their fields, and life went on as usual. Beneath that serene veneer, however, the society was protected by an unseen system of coordination, communication, and surveillance. When you first started training us, I thought we were just learning to defend ourselves, Sarah said as she watched the last of the light go out. However, isn't this different? We're transforming the way people view the valley, not just preserving it. Logan gave a nod. Physical security was only one aspect of the valley's change. They had produced something special, a community that could protect itself while maintaining an entirely normal appearance. Making the valley appear dull to officials and useless to criminals at the same time was the best defense, not tactics or guns. He informed his colleagues that the next step would begin tomorrow. Enhancing synchronization and growing the training program. We must exercise even greater caution in light of the federal attention. Everything was authentic and verified. Knox thought, hiding in plain sight. It's like the old days, only different. I never imagined that I would be conducting a legitimate operation under a false pretense. Making sure everyone believes they already know something is sometimes the best way to keep it a secret, Logan said. On a calm Sunday morning, the Colombian cartel conducted their first significant investigation. They dispatched what looked like real businessmen, rather than overt scouts or intimidation teams. 3 well-dressed people in a rental automobile with briefcases full of development suggestions that look real. Sarah, who had overheard their chat in passing in the diner, claimed that real estate developers wanted to construct a resort complex. Incredibly convincing cover. Logan followed the developers as they met with property owners throughout the valley via his security feeds. Their strategy involved intricate contracts that looked authentic, assurances of economic growth, and cautious avoidance of any potentially dangerous actions. From his observation perch, Knox noted that they were learning. Just commercial ideas that just so happened to be supported by cartel funds, no guns, no thugs, and no clear criminal affiliation. After background checks were finished, Zane contacted. Shell corporations are linked to front groups in Colombia. They are attempting to lawfully purchase the valley. This necessitated an alternative approach to their typical strategies. Logan assembled his core group as the guests' movements were monitored by the community network. They were unable to reply with threats of environmental danger or intimidation. A more nuanced strategy was required to counter this threat. Logan felt it was time to pull out the historical society gambit. "You're up, Nash." At the neighborhood coffee shop, Nash, who had made a name for himself as an amateur historian in addition to his medical practice, stopped the developers. His passion for regional history was well recognized and completely sincere. "You want to learn more about development?" He slid into their booth without permission and let out a loud cry. "The archaeological surveys, have you seen them? The entire valley is protected. Historic battlefields and Native American cemeteries. There are more preservation orders than there is land that can be developed." The developers looked at each other. They hadn't anticipated this kind of opposition. They encountered an enthusiastic historian who was bringing out maps and material, rather than frightened farmers or armed opponents. "The entire valley is protected by the federal government, something that most people are unaware of," Nash added with a smile. "Act to protect archaeological resources. The National Historic Preservation Act. Nothing can be constructed without years of surveying. Just obtaining the necessary permissions to install a garage took the previous developer 5 years. Through Nash's hidden microphone, Logan had to appreciate the performance. Each document was authentic. Every rule is authentic. The valley appeared too bureaucratically complex for any significant development because they had spent months building this line of defense. The lead developer said thoughtfully, "Interesting. There was no historical importance found in our research." "Yes," Nash said eagerly, "that's because the majority of it is classified. You know, a military testing range during World War II. Unexploded ordnance continues to be discovered. Last month, I had to make 2 calls to the explosive squad." Sarah picked that exact moment to burst in, playing her part flawlessly. "They discovered another one in Thompson's Field, Dr. Nash. Before they summon the disposal team, they need you to confirm if it is historical." It was clear that the developer was losing interest. Armed resistance, federal bureaucracy, and protected land status were not the only obstacles they faced in their meticulous plans for lawful property acquisition. Logan said on the radio that he might want to bring up the endangered species survey. Nash eagerly took advantage of the moment. "And let's not even talk about the spotted owls," he said. "The entire valley is a protected area. Studies of environmental impacts take years. Without federal authority, it is impossible to even prune a tree." The developers were already preparing to go by the time Nash had completed his ebullient explanation of unexploded ordnance procedures, historical preservation standards, and environmental restrictions. Their lawful strategy had encountered an unbreakable barrier of bureaucratic complexities. According to Knox, they're pulling out. "On my way to the highway. Do I need to prepare a parting message?" "No need," Logan said. "Give them up. They will take care of our work while alerting others to the regulatory disaster." The group later convened to assess the success of the operation. Carefully constructed legal barriers, rather than coercion or threats, had prevented the Colombian cartel's effort at lawful purchase. "Very nice setup," Cyrus said. "Every document is authentic, and every rule is true. They can verify that everything Nash told them is accurate." Zane said, "That's the beauty of it. We only ensured sure the rules applied here, we didn't make them. Nobody can demonstrate that we're doing anything other than strictly according to the law." With reports from her network of watchers, Sarah arrived. Already, word is getting out. The visits of 2 other development groups were cancelled. It appears that nobody wants to handle our regulatory problems. Logan said it was better than guards or guns. As they say, you can't fight City Hall. Or federal preservation orders, as in this instance. But additional difficulties arose as a result of their success. Sheriff Cooper showed up with a worried expression. "I had some inquiries from members of the State Historical Society. It looks like a number of preservation requests have been submitted recently. A natural curiosity about local history." Logan's response was moderate. "When you start looking, you discover amazing things." Cooper let out a sigh. "Logan, we've had archaeological research, endangered species surveys, petitions for historical preservation, and environmental protection orders in the last month. It's becoming apparent that this valley has more red tape than the Pentagon." Logan grinned and said, "Good fences make good neighbors. Occasionally, those barriers are composed of documents." The sheriff took a time to examine him. "You know, I assumed you were merely teaching the fundamentals of security when you first started planning the neighborhood watch. However, this is something else entirely. You're preventing an invasion in addition to defending the valley." "Everybody has their skills," Logan said. "Certain people are adept at spotting trouble. Others are adept at circumventing federal laws. All of this results in a community that is capable of self-defense without ever appearing dangerous." Following Cooper's departure, the team held its evening briefing. Although the Colombian cartel's effort at a lawful acquisition had been thwarted, they were aware that this would not be the final obstacle. Knox said they'll try again. Next time, use a different strategy. Let them, Logan said. We increase our cover with each failed attempt. Our protection appears more natural the more respectable companies abandon us in frustration over restrictions. The area seemed worthless to developers, too complicated for crooks, and too dull for government investigation as the sun sank over the valley, leaving long shadows in its wake. Beneath that meticulously constructed facade, however, was a community ready to fend itself from any threat, ready to use documentation just as successfully as guns. Sarah noted that I had assumed we would be taught combat skills when you first began teaching us. I never imagined that rules pertaining to historical preservation would be our strongest defense. Logan grinned. He had served in the military for many years and had discovered that the greatest wins frequently occurred without a single shot being fired. He was now imparting the same lesson to his neighborhood. Sometimes a carefully constructed reality that renders attacks seem futile is the best defense, not a wall or a weapon. Zane's interception of encrypted conversations between three distinct cartels was the first indication of concerted opposition. Criminal groups from Mexico, Colombia, and Russia were exchanging intelligence, comparing notes, and recognizing that the valley's defense was more complicated than it first seemed. During an emergency team meeting, Zane reported that they are combining their resources. Recognizing trends in our answers. Our defensive layers are being mapped by the environmental risks, the preservation of history, and the administrative obstacles. Logan looked over the intelligence files and observed how well their opponent had done their analysis. This is now being handled like a military operation. Expert evaluation of threats and identification of patterns. Knox continued, I got movement on multiple fronts. 3 different development firms are attempting to purchase land. Although they all appear to be genuine, they are all supported by various cartels. They are methodically putting our bureaucratic defenses to the test. It wasn't just outside pressure. Sarah came from the civilian network with some troubling news. An intruder is here. Last month, a new family moved in, ostensibly to avoid debt collectors. They're showing up at sensitive places and asking too many questions. This was what Logan had anticipated. They had become a target because of their success, and their adversaries were adjusting. It's time to change tactics. The same defenses are no longer sufficient. As they saw many dangers descend on their valley, the squad assembled around his tactical monitor. Their defenses weren't the only thing the criminal alliance was testing. They were searching for trends, vulnerabilities, or anything that could provide insight into the valley's impenetrability. The latest strategy is smart, according to Nash. They are challenging our claims for historical preservation in court. Employed respectable archaeologists to refute our conclusions. Even prompted inquiries concerning the military testing range narrative from a senator's office. The environmental protection angle is also being impacted, Cyrus continued. Next week, the EPA will dispatch inspectors. A thorough investigation of those pollution accusations is being pushed for. Logan had anticipated this, but he was alarmed by the way the attacks were coordinated. The criminal behavior of their opponents has stopped. They had a competent intelligence operation going on. With a tight voice, Tommy, Thompson's boy, radioed in, Sir. The North Ridge is being worked on by 3 survey teams. They are searching for the Native American burial sites we informed them about using ground-penetrating radar. By exposing their deceit through legal channels, the criminal alliance was methodically tearing down their cover stories. It was an advanced tactic that might potentially destroy their whole defense plan. Logan thought it was time to adjust. Knox, begin the second training phase. Turn on the backup network, Sarah. Implement the Delta Communications Protocol, Zane. The tension was evident, but the team moved with a lack of practice. For months, they had been conducting this operation, keeping up their cover identities and exercising constant vigilance. The strain was wearing thin. Nash reported that he had another issue. "My credentials are being questioned by the medical board. Someone is researching our past in great detail." Logan had anticipated this as well. They had good covers. Although the government had assisted in their establishment, a thorough inquiry could uncover discrepancies. The criminal collaboration exhibited patience, professionalism, and thoroughness. Sarah noted that they are no longer merely attempting to break in. They are attempting to comprehend how we prevent them from entering. "They expose us if they expose our methods," Logan said. "It's time to introduce them to something unexpected." Logan laid out his strategy as the group drew nearer. Their opponents had compelled them to do it, even though it was dangerous and unlike anything they had ever tried. Before their meticulously built walls were taken down, they had to alter the rules of the game. Logan clarified that rather than concealing who we are, we expose their fears in a way that is unavoidable, lawful, and public. It was a bold plan. They would turn the valley into something even more impenetrable, a private security testing and training facility, fully legal and publicly sanctioned, rather than continuing to operate as ordinary farmers with exceptionally good organization. When they brought Cooper in, he confirmed that the state had been trying to set up a training center for rural law enforcement using your facilities and experience. Logan nodded, "We become exactly what they think we are, but legally, openly, with full government approval." The change started right away. The shooting range owned by Knox was converted into an official law enforcement training center. Nash's medical practice grew to include teaching tactical combat treatment. Courses on protecting rural infrastructure began to be offered at Cyrus' workshop. Sarah said, "Nice strategy," as she saw the new training center's building get underway. "We formally became a military operation after they spent months attempting to expose us as such. They can no longer harm us without drawing federal notice." The criminal partnership, however, was not going to give up. Their infiltrators stayed put, observing, documenting, and searching for flaws in the valley's new persona. The pressure persisted, less overt but no less perilous. Zane cautioned that they are once again evolving, beginning to target our supporters beyond the valley, putting pressure on suppliers, and looking into business partners. "They're attempting to keep us apart." Logan observed his altered valley as the sun sank. The farm was still there and still in business, but it was now a part of something bigger. They had kept themselves safe, but in the process they had lost the basic tranquility they had aimed to preserve. As Knox cleaned his gun following yet another training session, he noted the cost of accomplishment. You can't conceal something this powerful indefinitely. Eventually, it had to be legitimate. Nash went on to ask, what happens when they realize that we're still hiding something deeper and that even this new identity is just another layer of defense? Watching fresh recruits exercise in the valley, Logan thought about this. They had developed a novel defensive system that could change and grow into whatever it needed to be in order to continue being effective. However, every advancement presented fresh difficulties, demands, and dangers to contend with. He concluded that we must continue to change and adapt. We transform into something different the instant they believe they comprehend us. The ability to be whatever we need to be to safeguard this valley is the true defense, not the narrative, the training, or the bureaucracy. The group gave a sympathetic nod. They had begun their operation with the idea that they could just put on a farmer's mask to conceal their powers. The capacity to adapt while staying essentially the same, to be both exactly what their adversaries dreaded and something completely different at the same time, was the true art of defense that they were now learning. There were additional challenges associated with the new law enforcement training facility. Logan's crew had to keep their cover tails under professional examination while working with state police instructors. Each training session became a careful balancing act between concealing their actual capabilities and demonstrating enough competence to be convincing. According to Knox, who reviewed applications, he received requests for advanced training from 6 different agencies, including a few 3-letter ones that we would prefer to stay away from. Being successful is turning into a liability. Logan observed a class of tactical drivers navigating his altered farm roads. Although the teachers were actual law enforcement officers, his team had quietly changed the course material to conceal their more sophisticated methods. Sarah radioed in another probe on the South Ridge. The lawful operation is being used as a cover for recon by cartels, who have 2 men with survey equipment but military-grade gear. Using the increased traffic to and from the training center as cover for their own operations, the criminal alliance had swiftly adjusted to their new status. Every authorized visitor has the potential to be dangerous. Infiltration is possible with every training session. While tending to a trainee's minor injury, Nash saw that they were using their creativity. This week, 3 different medical equipment providers with ties to well-known criminal organizations attempted to tour the facility. A more intrusion attempt was detected by Zane's surveillance network. Received a request for interviews from a professional news crew. A background check reveals connections to media cartels. Through public interest articles, they are attempting to map our facility. The pressure was multidirectional, complex, and steady. Logan's group was forced to manage 3 missions at once. Counter-surveillance against more professional resistance, their clandestine Valley Defense Network, and the authorized training facility. Tommy, Thompson's boy, called urgently, "Sir. The archaeologists have returned, but there's a change. Their ground-penetrating radar isn't merely a showpiece. Our underground installations could be detected by military surplus." Logan took swift action to neutralize this danger. "Knox, start the Delta training drill. That region is too busy to do a thorough survey." A tactical driving course, replete with fake smoke and noise that would destroy their equipment, quickly stopped the archaeology team's work. There was an instantaneous, apparently valid reaction to each possible exposure. It's becoming more difficult to stay balanced. During their nightly briefing, Cyrus made a note. "We must avoid drawing attention by not appearing overly professional. We can't appear too inexperienced or risk losing our credibility. This is a tightrope walk." The most recent tactic employed by the criminal alliance was quite astute. Real police officers were now being sent to the training facility. Those who had been purchased or compromised. These experts had the qualifications to enter sensitive places and knew what to look for. Sarah reported receiving 3 additional applications from out-of-state departments. Officers with impeccable records who have dubious financial records. In our training programs, they are attempting to insert observers. Logan looked over the scenario board, taking note of the emerging patterns of inquiry and reaction. Their rivals were meticulous, patient, and always improving. Although the valley's defenses were holding, they were becoming more expensive to maintain. A new issue? Nash dialed. Inspections are sent by the Medical Certification Board. Our trauma treatment procedures became the subject of a complaint. Our ability to teach tactical medicine is being questioned. Compared to the criminal problems, the lawful ones were more difficult to overcome. In order to preserve their cover story and meet regulatory standards, each official inquiry required paperwork, justification, and careful management. It's time to change once more. Logan made up his mind. We have been reactive, answering their questions. We must alter the strategy before they discover a weakness in our protection. To hear his new plan, the crew assembled. They had constructed layers of dishonesty. Environmental risks, historical landmarks, administrative roadblocks, and lastly, the official training facility. They required more now. We will give them what they desire, Logan clarified. Let them believe that they have discovered our secret. Make it a dead end, but show them exactly what they're expecting. It was a complicated scheme. They would make it possible for one of the cartel's detective units to find proof of their military experience. Not all of it, but enough to give them hope that they would figure out the secret of the valley's protection. Logan went on, let them locate some old Delta Force documentation. Give them the impression that we are a respectable training facility run by former operators. It is credible because it is sufficiently close to the truth. Distinct enough to conceal our true potential. Wonderful. Knox gave a nod. They'll believe they've discovered who we really are. Give up searching for more in-depth cover stories. In the meantime, our actual activity remains concealed underneath what they perceive to be our covert operation. The implementation got started right away. Inadvertently, carefully chosen documents were left in plain sight of astute investigators. Training sessions were altered to occasionally display signs of highly developed military skills. Covered quickly, yet not completely concealed. Zane said they're keeping an eye on communications and taking the bait. Our military backgrounds are being used by cartel analysts to create profiles. They believe they know why they are unable to get past our defenses. As their rivals turned their attention to this new finding, the pressure changed. The criminal alliance started to regard them as a known quantity, dangerous but understood, rather than attempting to reveal their operation. The true test is about to begin, Sarah noted. Can we continue to be the ordinary farmers, the authorized training facility, and what people believe to be our covert military history? Logan observed his changed valley as the sun sank. Crops continued to grow and the farm continued to function, but it was now a part of a multi-layered, intricate scam. Every identity concealed something more profound, yet each was authentic in its own unique manner. Finally, he answered, we adapt. Keep their attention on what they believe they have found. Our true strength, however, remains hidden, not in our training or military experience, but in the network and community we've established that they are still unaware of. The group nodded as they realized they had developed something special, a defense mechanism that could present several faces to various onlookers, each sufficiently authentic to survive scrutiny while concealing more profound realities. Logan's security network kept up its invisible task as night fell. The actual operation went on unaltered under the pretense of legal training exercises and the meticulous display of military prowess. Unaware that they had only witnessed what Logan intended them to, the criminal alliance believed they had fully grasped the valley's protection. The criminal alliance's response at dawn was something considerably more dangerous, legitimacy, rather than violence or intimidation. The valley's numerous protection designations, environmental studies, historical preservation claims, and zoning restrictions were all the target of simultaneous lawsuits by 3 different development corporations. After looking over the legal documents, Zane reported that they were no longer attempting to break in. They are attempting to undermine our expert witnesses, competent attorneys, administrative defenses, and even political pressure. After learning from their mistakes, Logan examined the growing difficulties and modified their strategy to focus on the legal safeguards of the valley instead of its physical barriers. Sarah called in 4 separate archaeological teams, each with court orders, asking for access. The lawsuits are being used to compel us to provide evidence for our claims to historical sites. Disguised as a training observation station, Knox kept an eye on the situation from his sniper's perch. Media teams are preparing to set up on the ridge. They're recording everything in an effort to find any discrepancies in our narrative. There was increasing pressure from every direction. While the team dealt with these new challenges, the training center had to continue its normal operations. Every workout and every class had to keep their cover while fighting off increasingly complex questions. Nash said EPA inspectors showed up early. They have soil testing equipment, ground-penetrating radar, and are demanding access to the hazardous regions we stated existed. The criminal alliance had figured out how to take advantage of the system. Every valid inquiry posed the risk of revealing yet another aspect of their dishonesty. The meticulously crafted narratives that had shielded the valley were being methodically demolished. Logan thought it was time to reveal them our last card. The one we have been reserving. The crew assembled in the barn, which was now used as a secret command center and a valid training ground. Logan had a bold strategy. They would welcome the inquiries rather than oppose them. Leave them in, he said. All of them, the media, the EPA, and the archaeologists, but make sure they see what we want them to. The ensuing operation was a masterful example of well-planned deceit. When detectives showed up to refute their allegations, they discovered precisely what they were searching for, but not in the way they had anticipated. Real Native American artifacts that had been meticulously preserved and recorded were found by the archaeological crews. In order to bolster their claim of contamination, the EPA discovered actual but innocuous soil abnormalities. Each inquiry substantiated their assertions without disclosing their actual intent. Cyrus watched the experts review their findings and thought, nice setup. Though not for the reasons they believe, everything they discover is authentic. However, the strain was having an adverse effect. The team was pushed to the limit by having to maintain several cover stories under close scrutiny. Farmers, trainers, and suspected military operators all needed to keep their identities to the highest standard. Thompson's boy reported seeing movement on the North Ridge, and cartel observers were keeping an eye on the investigations. They're holding out for a crack. Logan was aware that a crucial moment was drawing near. This legal attack had cost the criminal partnership a great deal of money. They would probably turn to more direct means if it didn't work. Sarah called urgently, "Sir." An inspector from the EPA called. The pattern corresponds to the protocols used by cartels. They have an insider on the team doing the probe. Logan had been waiting for this moment. Let them believe they have discovered something. It's time to demonstrate to them the true impregnability of T.S. Valley. The group carried out their last trick. Evidence of their military experience was discovered by the corrupted inspector. They were just what the cartel suspected, according to well-produced documents. An authorized training center is operated by retired special operations. They're falling for the ruse. Zane said he was keeping an eye on communications. The legal teams of cartel leadership are retreating. They believe they have finally grasped the situation they are in. However, this seeming triumph carried with it new difficulties. The criminal alliance started organizing a fresh kind of operation once they thought they had exposed the valley's defenders as former military operations. According to intercepted messages, they are hiring qualified military contractors. Knox cautioned. They believe they understand who we are today. They are therefore getting ready to battle us on those grounds. Logan assembled his group for an important meeting. The last stage of the valley's metamorphosis was about to begin. Their opponents had seen exactly what they had anticipated. However, the true quality of their defense was not revealed. Logan told them to think they had us figured out. Allow them to get ready to battle retired operators. In the meantime, our true strength, the integrated defensive system, the community network, and citizen observers, remains unseen. With reports from her civilian network, Sarah arrived. Every townie, rancher, and farmer was ready for what was about to happen. They had prepared for this as neighbors defending their home, not as warriors. The training center is visible to them. Logan clarified, they see our military backgrounds. They failed to realize the extent of our protection. How each individual within this valley is a part of something greater than they may realize. On what seemed to be the triumph of the criminal alliance, the sun set. They believed they had uncovered the valley's secret and comprehended its protections. Rather, they had succumbed to the last stage of trickery. Logan informed his crew, tomorrow. Professional operators will arrive in force to confront what they believe to be retired troops. However, they will discover something quite different. Each member of the team knew their part in the future as they scattered to their stations. For months, the criminal alliance had been attempting to figure out why they were unable to capture this valley. They would discover the truth tomorrow, but it would not be the truth they had anticipated. Logan watched the valley get ready as night fell. Everyone in the community, not just his team, is taking practice positions. Their defense's true power lay in something the cartels would never comprehend, not in military training or tactical know-how. The strength of a community standing together for its own protection. As Logan had warned, the criminal alliance struck at midnight. They were a formidable force. Advanced equipment, former special forces operators, and qualified military contractors. They arrived ready to take on what they believed to be the valley's defense. A small group of retired Delta pilots operating a training center. They discovered something quite different. Tommy Thompson stared from his family's barn, whispering steadily into his radio, "Contact West. The wheat field is traversed by 3 teams." From her vantage point, Sarah added, "Verified movement east. They're employing typical military tactics." Similar tales came rolling in from all throughout the valley. Farmers, ranchers, store owners, and other regular folks who had mastered the art of being great observers, not Logan's team. The criminal force discovered that dozens of unseen eyes were following it. From his vantage point, Knox said, "They're good. Expert motions and appropriate tactical distances. They believe they are facing a few elderly soldiers." Logan observed the activity from his command center. The assailants made precise movements. Obviously anticipating military opposition. Rather, they came across something for which they had never received any training. A community functioning as a single, well-coordinated defense force. Zane said the first team was on its way to Henderson's house, triggering the Alpha response sequence. The first surprise for the criminal force was the abrupt breakdown of their communications. The source of the seemingly random babble on every channel was a network of civilian radio operators, not military jamming. Ordinary farm security lights unexpectedly interfered with their night vision technology. Well-timed and positioned. "They're getting used to it," Sarah said. Attempting to keep formation while switching to hand signals. The valley's Real defense came into view at that point. Farmers followed established protocols when moving their equipment. Every ordinary task is a component of a bigger plan. Firm ground turned to mud as irrigation systems came on. Careful formations were disrupted by the unleashing of cattle. Every civilian action turned into a strategic roadblock. According to Tommy, the Western team is divided. Lost their tactical edge after being split apart by Miller's herd. Their military experience proved to be a liability for the experienced operators. They were ready for tactical confrontations and armed resistance. Instead, they encountered a well-coordinated sequence of commonplace occurrences that strangely ruined their meticulously thought-out strategy. "They're recognizing that something is amiss," Knox said. "They are beginning to realize that this is not what they anticipated." The command structure of the criminal forces started to exhibit symptoms of stress. Their intended operation was disintegrating due to their incapacity to sustain any tactical advantage rather than direct opposition. Every action they took was repelled by ostensibly harmless civilian actions. Logan said it was time for Phase 2. Lights came on in homes all throughout the valley. As residents left, doors opened and phone cameras began to capture. With dozens of citizens now documenting their clandestine approach, the professional operatives were abruptly exposed. "Suspicious activity has been reported to the police," Sarah said over an open channel. State police tactical teams are on their way after several residents reported armed intruders. The commander of the criminal forces discovered their mistake too late. They couldn't retreat without being caught on camera, and they couldn't engage without producing civilian witnesses. Every choice had been methodically eliminated by citizen presence rather than military force. Zane said they are beginning to pull out, but the main route is blocked by Thompson's delayed logging trucks. The alternate path is closed due to Martin's construction activity. They encounter another civilian hurdle on each escape route. Logan's group hadn't fired a gun or confronted anyone directly. Rather, they had planned a defense that made everyday civilian life into an insurmountable wall. Sheriff Cooper acknowledged that there are state police barriers in place. Tactical FBI squads are coming from the south. We have unmistakable proof of armed intruders and dozens of civilian witnesses. The professional force of the criminal alliances was in a precarious situation. They were imprisoned by a whole community that had transformed daily existence into a well-coordinated defense mechanism, not by troops. Logan said, "Final phase." Farmers all around the valley began their daily activities exactly as planned and on time. Surrounded by bystanders going about their regular lives, the criminal operatives found themselves attempting to hold tactical positions. Every action they took was observed, noted, and reported. Knox said they're breaking. The command element is requesting a complete withdrawal. At last, they realize what they're actually dealing with. With their meticulous military preparations rendered ineffective against a resistance they had never envisioned, the criminal troop withdrew in confusion. They had arrived ready to engage in combat with soldiers, but farmers had defeated them. Following the incident, Logan convened his group for a last evaluation. The valley had been made even more secure by the revelation of its actual protection. Sarah noted that they will never comprehend the true nature of what transpired here. Under the cover of a training facility, they believed they were engaged in combat. Rather, they found that military training was only a minor element of something far bigger, Knox continued. More secure than ever, Logan watched the sun rise over his valley. The most professional operators, tactical specialists, and military equipment were brought by the criminal alliance. Nonetheless, they were all beaten by the strength of a community that was unified in its defense, not by superior force. Logan told his team that's what they never understood. Farmers weren't made into soldiers by us. By being authentic, we taught a community how to defend itself. Farmers, ranchers, and regular folks cooperating. The valley was completely transformed, not into a tactical training center or a military fortress, but into something much more powerful, a community capable of self-defense without ever coming across as defensive. Zane reviewed the events of the night and said, "They'll study this for years." Without firing a shot, professional military operators were totally neutralized. There was no direct conflict or tactical involvement, just a community conducting its affairs in a highly organized manner. Logan considered how far they had come as the valley resumed its daily routine. For months, the criminal alliance had been attempting to figure out why they were unable to capture this land. They ultimately failed because they were hunting for the wrong thing, military defenses, when the true strength was found in cooperation, togetherness, and the strength of common people working together. Now what? As the team watched the valley come to terms with its new situation, Sarah questioned. Now, Logan retorted, we return to farming, to operating our training facility, to being precisely what we seem to be, a self-sufficient society. The sun rose higher, illuminating a valley that had not changed in appearance from the previous day. However, something had changed. The criminal alliance had finally discovered that the reason this area was impregnable was not because soldiers guarded it, but rather because something much stronger, a community that had figured out how to make everyday life into an incredible defense, protected it. 2 more amazing tales await you directly on your screen in the next section. You won't want to miss these if you liked this one. Simply click to view, and remember to subscribe. A lot would be at stake.
Disclaimer. This channel stands against all forms of intolerance, discrimination, racism, and violations of human rights. The stories shared here are original creations, developed to encourage reflection, understanding, and constructive dialogue. All content is produced with a commitment to respecting diversity and honoring human dignity.